You're listening to the free version of the Patreon Party People podcast, which is released 1 month after it goes up for Patreon donors. If you want to stay up to date with the latest podcasts as soon as they are released, just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog and pledge $1 or more. Now you might ask yourself, who would pay for a podcast? And you know what? Fair enough. I am but a single person, and doing all of this stuff, that means writing scripts, capturing footage, editing video, it all takes a lot of time and effort. And that's just one thing out of many creative pursuits that also take a lot of effort to produce. So don't think of Patreon as paying for a podcast. It's about giving me the security to keep providing you with more great stuff in the future. Plus, if you donate, you'll also get sneak peeks into whatever upcoming projects I'm working on, like work-in-progress versions of videos or beta builds of games I'm developing. Don't have a Patreon account? That's fine. You'll also find links to Ko-fi, PayPal, and even Amazon wishlists. Just visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog to learn more. One more time, that's patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Hey, so I just wanted to offer a disclaimer before the podcast starts. I go into a fair amount of detail about a recent visit to the dentist and upcoming dental surgery. If that makes you uncomfortable and you don't want to hear it, you can skip this discussion by going to the
21 minutes
mark in this podcast. Or maybe around the
21 minutes
mark. With this intro preamble that you're hearing right now and the intro music, I'm not entirely sure where it's going to land, but somewhere in the realm of
21
minutes should get you past all of the nasty, weird details of what is going on in my mouth. Truth be told, it's not really that bad, but, people get weird about the dentist, and I figured I'd save you the trouble if it's something that really does bother you. So once again, if you don't want to hear about any of that stuff,
21 minutes.
And you should be good. It does come up every now and then a little bit later in the podcast, but I do try and keep the discussion to a minimum once I'm past the subject. Okay, that's just about it. Take care and happy listening. Hello and welcome to the Patreon Party People podcast. It is February the 5th, 2021, and I am, of course, your host, Ryan Bloom. We've got a very big podcast coming up here today. For starters, we're going to talk about why it was so late. What else? Things going on with my YouTube network. I guess Game of the Year stuff, maybe, if I feel like it. That's kind of around the periphery a little bit. I still not entirely decided if I want to do that. Upcoming videos for the YouTube channel, well, specifically not my YouTube channel, but videos I'm in on another YouTube channel. And then we'll be talking about the poll results from the Patreon poll I ran just last week. But hi folks, hi, how are you doing out there on the internet? I am very sleepy. I've been sleeping pretty good for the last week, but last night I only had about 5.5 hours of sleep. It was the sort of thing where I woke up and I thought, man, I'm not going back to sleep. You wake up just enough to where you lay there in bed for like a half an hour not doing anything, and you just regrettably resign yourself to getting out of bed and getting up. And to be honest, I feel like I could crawl right back into bed right now and go back to sleep. But this podcast has been late enough. Anyway, you might hear a lot of very loud noises outside. We're going to get to that later on. There are things happening around the complex, my apartment complex, that we will be talking about. But for starters, one of the reasons why this podcast is so late, and I know, we've had a lot of excuses over the last year about why podcasts are late. Things are moving and shaking, and, it's a very uncertain time, and I've dealt with, emotional problems and things like that. This time, as you may know from last month, I had a dentist appointment, probably right before Christmas, maybe a little bit earlier than that. I had, a really bad toothache, and I mean part of my face swelled up. and I had to go see a dentist. And the idea was that, I think I was going in, they were going to pull the one bad tooth that was causing me trouble. But I've also talked about on my blog and like elsewhere, bad teeth sort of run in my family. I almost knocked my teeth out when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old. I went through this massive depression for a really long time where, I very definitely stopped taking care of my body for like a year, 2 years, something like that. I stopped showering, I stopped brushing my teeth. Once tooth decay starts getting in there, you kind of can't really stop it. You can slow it down, but you can't really stop it. So, there's always been like this looming storm cloud of one day I'm going to have to deal with what's happening to my teeth. And even though I went in there to get one tooth pulled after the antibiotics they gave me in December, we decided, my tooth doesn't hurt right now. It can stay in for the time being. But I do have another appointment with the dentist coming up in about 2.5 weeks where I will be receiving major dental surgery, which means that this might be the last podcast you hear from me until late March, early April, we'll say, maybe. Maybe earlier than that. I don't know. It depends on the recovery time. They are going to be taking a lot of teeth out of my mouth. A lot of teeth, and I'm going to be receiving some amount of implants, some amount of false teeth. There was discussion of, putting in a bridge and, just full dentures and all this other stuff. Again, this is all stuff that I've been expecting for a very long time. I think I said it last podcast. My mom had her first pair of dentures when she was 19. She was barely out of high school when she had her entire upper mouth replaced with dentures, like full denture replacements. It wasn't just a bridge. It was her whole top row of teeth just gone when she was 19. So, bad teeth might run in my family, but I've at least held on to what I have for as long as I have. And we were weighing options and things like that. So, there will be a time in the future where a good deal of my teeth will not be real. Or they'll be real enough that I can eat food, but they won't be the original teeth. And, I've been looking into things like this for years now. I think I'm just retreading what I said last podcast, but they have like implants and things like that, like real implants, not just like dentures that you glue onto your gums or anything like that. I mean, like, you put metal pins in your gums and you kind of snap the teeth on there, and they just kind of stay in there permanently so that you don't have to deal with denture creams and everything else. They just become, synthetic teeth that are in your mouth. And they're very expensive. I was talking to the dentist and he said, that usually starts at like $1,500. And, depending on how complex the implants you want, that can go up to, $30,000. It's not cheap. But like, the $30,000 ones, like I've looked at that's for like replacing individual teeth one at a time. They literally just drill brand new teeth into your jaw one by one. And I'm not a fan of that. Yeah, I don't want that. That's an expensive luxury. I don't need one at a time teeth like that. That's crazy to me. I can't even imagine a world where that would be possible. But there are, like I said, just these pins that your dentures kind of snap into. And we were talking about that. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't want to get too into the weeds here because I know, some people get a little squicked out when it comes to talking about tooth problems, about going to the dentist, geez, me, like we're talking about me. The last time I went to the dentist before, 2 or 3 weeks ago was in 2008. And before 2008, the last time I'd been to a dentist was probably like 1996. Like, I avoid going to the dentist for as long as humanly possible, which when you consider the fact that I said bad teeth run in my family, that's probably not the smartest idea for me. I probably could have had more preventative measures if I'd gone to the dentist more often. Fillings eventually do rot and fall out. That's just a natural part of having fillings, but it does preserve your teeth for longer. But it is what it is. I made my decisions, and now I have to live with them, which is unfortunate. But again, like I've been saying this entire time, I've known this was coming for a long time. And part of the reason, to go deeper into why this podcast took so long to come out, so I went into the dentist, and my teeth didn't hurt then because they'd cleared out the infection with the antibiotics they'd given me. So he goes in there and he goes, well, first thing we need to do is we need to get that tooth out. And I said, it doesn't hurt. And he kind of looks at me, he furrows his brow, the dentist. And he goes, huh. And he takes that little metal mirror they have, and he goes ting, ting, ting against, the bad tooth. And it didn't hurt. It felt fine. So, we talked about, surgery and replacements and things like that. And he sent me home. And then in the next 2 or 3 days, the week following, we're talking very last week of December, very first 2-3 weeks of January, I started getting another toothache, a really bad one. It kind of all started to relapse again. And I know why that is. When I went into the dentist, I think they do this because of COVID. They had me use a very special mouthwash. At the time, as I was swishing around in my mouth, it just tasted like water. It didn't taste like anything, it didn't taste minty like mouthwash does. But I could tell that there was something in it. And for the next 10, 15, 20 minutes after that, there was this very strange sensation in my mouth. It wasn't really burning, but it was this weird tingling feeling. I think it was probably some kind of peroxide or alcohol solution or something to try and kill the germs that were in my mouth, just in case, preventative measures for COVID. All the dentists, everyone at the office was wearing face masks. I had to wear a face mask to go in. They wouldn't even let me in the waiting room. Basically, what would happen is you'd walk up to the office, knock on the door, and wait for a nurse to come out. She would hand you your paperwork and then go back inside. And they had a sign on the door that said, just wait in your car and we'll come and get you. So, very much taking as many precautions as they can. I don't think I got COVID while I was there. I've been feeling fine. No fevers, no nothing. So, they're doing their job. It's fine. It's good. They're healthy. I'm healthy, relatively speaking. But, after that, after they gave me this mouthwash, I think that's what gave me the toothache. Because if you look on the bottle for traditional mouthwash, Listerine, Oragel, or whatever it's called, antiseptic mouthwash. If you look on the instructions, it tells you, it gives you a warning. Do not use this if you have, bad gums, if you have, an abscess, if you have a tooth infection, things like that. Because what can actually happen is that when you, disinfect your mouth, I guess, it's sort of like why they tell you not to use too much hand sanitizer, right? Is that you can create, the infection comes back and it will come back even stronger and worse than ever before. And thankfully this time, when I got out of the dentist, because what am I going to do? I'm not going to call him and say, hey, my toothache is back. I know we said we didn't have to pull that one tooth, but could we now pull it? Because, I now had an appointment for some date in the future, February 24th, where I'm going back in for dental surgery so that they can pull even more teeth. I'm not going to say, can I go back in and you can pull this one tooth? No. So I just kind of had to tough it out. And thankfully, I think I caught it early enough to where I fought it back on my own. When you have bad teeth, I think I might have even talked about this, once again, not to retread material from last month, but when you have, bad teeth for an extended period of time, you start to learn home remedies on how to fight back against toothaches without going to see the dentist. And the home remedy that my mom turned me on to was taking vitamin C. Or just vitamins in general, but mainly vitamin C, because that boosts your immune system. and it better equips you to fight off tooth infections. And, truth be told, all this is connected, but I think that might have been where my kidney stone came from in 2017. One of the only side effects of taking large amounts of vitamin C is that it increases your chances of getting a kidney stone. And there was definitely a period, we'll say 2011, 2012, where I had a toothache that lasted, we'll say 4.5, 5 months. And I was taking, 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 vitamin C a day, probably more, probably closer to 15 or even 20. I was taking so much vitamin C that it would make my stomach upset because I was trying to fight back this tooth infection and, avoid going to the dentist. That's how much I hate going to the dentist, is that, I would endure this pain for 4 months, probably 5 or 6 months, really, just so that I didn't have to go to a dentist and get a tooth pulled. Like to give you an example, when I went into the dentist in 2008 to have 2 bottom molars pulled, it was like 1 wisdom tooth and 1 molar. I was sitting there in the chair, they were getting me prepped up and ready to pull my teeth, and they were giving me shots of Novocaine, to numb my mouth. And I was having such a bad panic attack, just sitting in the dentist chair alone. Nobody else is in the room with me. I'm just sitting in the chair waiting for the Novocaine to take hold. And the panic attack was so immense. So, it was like, it was beyond anything I'd ever felt. And I felt some really bad panic attacks in my day. Panic attacks is why I dropped out of high school, is because I was, my body, my brain was shutting down. That's why, again, I stopped brushing my teeth. I stopped showering because I was just racked with these awful panic attacks and depression and all this other stuff. I was a basket case just about. And the panic attack I was having in the dentist office in 2008 was the worst panic attack I've ever had in my entire life. And there was no threat to my being at that point in time. I was just waiting. I was just sitting there by myself listening to music. I wasn't having intrusive thoughts. I wasn't doing anything. I was just waiting for the Novocaine to take hold, and I almost passed out. It was that bad. I came probably within a hair's breadth of passing out in the dentist chair, just by myself, no active threat. It was a nightmare, and I've been saying this a lot. I don't want to belittle people that have PTSD, because I know it's a serious mental condition, and I know, getting your teeth pulled is kind of just this thing that people do. Everyone gets their teeth pulled. But for 2 or 3 years, maybe more, after I got those 2 teeth pulled, I was having PTSD flashbacks to the thought and the feeling and the sound of those teeth being pulled. Because it didn't hurt. They had to give me the maximum legal dose of Novocaine so that, I wouldn't feel anything when they pulled those 2 teeth in 2008. But I could still feel it. You could still hear the sound because it's your jaw. It's right next to your ear. You can hear and feel that sound. Not to get too gross and scare people away from listening to the rest of this podcast, because it's going to be a long podcast. But you can hear and feel that, the bones crunching as they pull the teeth out. And for years, I would just, if your head is empty, any thought can pop in there, any memory for any reason, it doesn't matter, because your head is never truly empty. It's always, you just stop paying attention to it or whatever. And just whenever my brain was idle for too long, it would instantly go to that thought and that memory of the crunch. And for a really long time, it was the sort of thing where I started to think, where is this? Why am I thinking of this crunching sound? Why am I thinking of this crunching feeling? Because I couldn't place where it had come from. I was so stressed out that it was almost like I blocked out the memory, but it was still surfacing. It was still bubbling up to the surface in these places. And then I realized, oh wait, that's right, that was the sound and the feeling of my teeth being pulled. And like weirdly enough, the moment I realized where it came from, it stopped happening. It stopped being this memory that bubbled to the surface. I don't know if that's like a symptom of PTSD. I don't know if that was actually PTSD, but it was really just like having these random flashbacks to this feeling, and it was ugh. Ugh. Thankfully, when I go in for my surgery on the 24th, they say it's mandatory sedation. They will be pulling enough teeth that they don't want me awake for that, because it's going to be like an hour that they're pulling teeth. Sorry for all like the really scary dental talk here at the start. I might actually insert something earlier on in the podcast that says, hey, if you don't want to hear me talk about teeth, about, going to the dentist, the feeling and the sound of teeth being pulled and talking about surgery and everything else, skip ahead. How far into the podcast are we? Skip ahead 21 minutes. Whoops. But yeah, 2021, barely even done with January, and it's already proving to be a year of many changes, of many great changes. Not like great as in like good changes, but great as in like massive changes, right? The world is shifting, times are different. We have a different president in the Oval Office, and he seems like a career politician, but at least he's not as bad as the last one. Another thing coming up, great changes in the world. Our renovation move is probably coming up soon. You may remember I've been talking about for a few months now, on and off, that I live in a very big apartment complex. It's probably about the size of its own little town. I counted once, and we have probably like 150, maybe 200 units on this lot, and probably close to like 300 to 700 people living here. We are our own little community, and for some reason, I guess ownership of the complex changed hands at some point last year, and the new owners want to go through and renovate the entire place. And what they mean by that is they want to go through each individual apartment, all 100, 150, 200 units, whatever. They want to go through all of them one by one by one by one and renovate the entire complex. And the instructions they gave us is that we'll get like a notice on the door. We'll get a sheet that say, hey, your number's up. You have 1 month to pack. And you pack all your stuff up. They pay for a moving team to come in, take all your boxes out. You are allowed to keep 1 TV, 1 bed per person. And I think that's actually it. Like they might let you have internet. But you keep your beds, you keep 1 TV. And then over the course of 10 days, they renovate your apartment. They do any necessary repairs. They put in new cabinets. They replace all the fixtures, new carpet. Maybe they paint on the inside. They just give the whole place a refresh. And the idea is that you're supposed to be out of the apartment all day from, I think it's something like 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. while the worker crews are in here renovating the place. And then after 5 p.m., all the workers leave and you can come back into your apartment. Obviously that's weird because they're renovating. That's why you only get to keep 1 bed per person and a TV, because you're not supposed to have anything else in the apartment. Because again, they're laying down new carpet, they're laying down new cabinets, they're, new sinks, new tubs, new everything. Probably like a new water heater, probably a new furnace. And we definitely need a new furnace. Ours is like, in the 3 or 4 years we've lived here, our furnace has broken like 5 times. So we definitely need a new one of those. We'll be getting new stoves, we'll be getting, everything. New fridge. But obviously, for 10 days, we'll come home, essentially, back to the apartment to sort of rest and relax. And every day we come back, things will be a little bit different. Maybe one day we'll come in and there will be new carpet. Maybe one day we'll come in and we won't have any more cabinets. They'll have pulled all the old cabinets out and they haven't put the new ones in yet. Or maybe they've only put in half of the new ones. Maybe they've only painted half of the apartment. Things like that. And we know that our number is coming up for this. They said that they would be going alphabetically, but it seems that they're being a little more erratic about this. But last Saturday, the people below us, because we live in an upstairs apartment, but the people below us got their 1 month notice. So they have to go down to the office, pick up cardboard boxes, and start packing up all their belongings so that they can be moved out of their apartment for 10 days, and then, come back 10 days later and move everything back in, re-unpack all their boxes and everything and get set back up. It's a real headache and it's a real hassle. But because the people below us got their notice, I assume, we both are assuming, really, me and my mom, are assuming that our number is going to be up, that, because it's Friday when I'm recording this. If the people below us got their notice last Saturday, there's a chance that tomorrow we'll get our notice that we have 1 month to begin packing. So again, first week of March, probably going to be when our 10 days starts. And that's going to be kind of a pain in the butt, honestly. Because if you figure my dentist appointment is on the 24th for my surgery, I'm going to be spending probably a good week, not being able to eat solid foods very well while my mouth heals, while also not being able to be in the apartment and eat the food that I want to eat. Because that's the other thing that they're going to be doing, right? Not only are they hiring the moving team, which is like Ryder or whatever. I've seen Ryder trucks around the apartment complex for months now. Not only are they hiring the moving team, but they say that they will provide us with meals, right? So we don't, because we won't be able to cook for ourselves. The stove is not going to be something we can use. They might even shut the gas off for a while, right? To put in the new appliances. They might even, sometimes shut the electricity off. So they will provide meals for us. And if I'm supposed to be eating soft foods, that's going to be a problem. Because, back in 2008, when I had those molars pulled, my wisdom tooth and the molar next to it, even just those two teeth, I was instructed to, drink with a straw, eat soft foods like chunky soups, things like that, for a week, 2 weeks, something like that, while my gums healed from the being teeth pulled. So that's going to be fun. And you figure, not to go back to the tooth stuff, but I think the idea is that they're going to pull some teeth, wait for them to heal, and then pull more teeth. That's kind of how serious that surgery is going to be, while they build my replacement teeth. So what I expect what that's going to mean is that on February 24th, I'm going to have a week to recover from my first surgery. Then we're going to move, and we're going to be trapped in the middle of our 10 days. And then probably at some point within those 10 days, I would assume my second surgery would happen, where, they actually give me the replacement teeth that we were talking about. And that's just going to be having everything hit all at once like that. That's not a great scenario, but I can't really help it. It's not really my choice. And all along, I was expecting for months now, I've been saying to myself, ever since I had this toothache, right? At the end, right before Christmas, right? I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to have some teeth pulled, all of this is going to hit the week we have to do our renovation move. And sure enough, it's really looking like all of this is hitting during the 10-day period where they're doing our renovation. So, again, expect the worst. You probably won't get a podcast from me until, at the earliest, the middle of March. Maybe the end of March, early April. It really depends on how much energy I have to get all my stuff set back up. Whether or not, stuff gets damaged in the move even, right? because that happened in 2017 when we moved from Colorado. I had all these computer problems because moving my desktop tower, 1,000 miles across the Colorado Rockies into Nevada, it got damaged. And, part of that was because I was an idiot and didn't transport it properly. I'm definitely going to try and make sure this time that I properly safeguard my desktop, let's say. One of the things that I'm really thinking about doing is that I just don't pack the desktop. Instead of, packing it into a box and worrying about whether or not the movers will treat this fragile computer properly, I was just thinking of it like keeping it in the car with me, right? But that depends on how strapped we are for space in the car, I guess. Because we are definitely going to be keeping some stuff with us in the car. Because, that's the sort of, that's the other thing. They're not paying for a hotel or anything while they renovate our apartment. They have this thing that they're calling the hospitality trailer, which is a communal space where multiple people from the apartment complex can come and go as they please. And in the middle of a pandemic, that seems like an extremely bad idea. We're going to be avoiding the hospitality trailer as much as humanly possible. We're going to be hanging out basically in our car for 10 days. Which is, we'll see what that's like. I don't know. I just bought a brand new battery for my laptop because I really expect, I'm going to be running off of battery power for however long it's going to be, things like that. Because we're just going to be hanging out in the car. That might not be as bad as it sounds. I mean, it sounds really bad. Don't get me wrong. It sounds terrible. I'm not looking forward to it. But there are places in Nevada that we can go, we can spend the day at, places that are probably safe-ish. I've posted pictures before of going to a duck pond that's not very far away from here. It's like this little park with this little tiny pond. And for some reason, literally hundreds and hundreds of ducks collect there. There are benches you can sit at, things like that. So we will probably, go spend a day at the duck pond, go hang out. There are other places we can go. Hopefully no place that's like an interior, but, outdoorsy places, parks and things like that, where we can be far away from people and not have to worry about, being trapped in an enclosed space with potentially sick people. Yeah, that's coming up soon. We're probably going to get our 1 month notice tomorrow. And if we don't, well, then I don't know what to do. Like I said, they said that they were going to go in alphabetical order, and they haven't been. You can definitely tell which apartments they are in the middle of renovating and which apartments have already been renovated. Because one of the telltale signs of this apartment complex is that we have vertical blinds, right? They're not Venetian blinds. They're like these blades, these plastic blades, and you kind of, they're dumb. I don't like them. They're very easy to break. But in the apartments that have already been renovated, those vertical shades, or I've already forgotten, curtains, whatever you want to call them, have been replaced with traditional Venetian blinds, the horizontal sort of thing. And you can, I walk down to get the mail every now and then because it's a very long walk. Again, this is a very big apartment complex, so, it takes a really long time to walk from our apartment, probably close to 2 literal blocks, to go get the mail. And, like I said, you can tell which apartments have been renovated and which ones haven't by looking at the windows. If they have Venetian blinds, then they've been renovated. And there are a lot of apartments way down by the office at the start of the alphabet, because, all the blocks are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., 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 all the way up to basically Z, because, again, big apartment complex. And you go down there, and there are apartments in A block, B block, all the way up to D and E and F, that don't have Venetian blinds yet, which means they haven't been renovated yet. And then walking home just yesterday after getting the mail, I noticed that there are apartments in the K block, which is, a couple letters ahead of us, that are now being renovated because they have blue tarps up over the windows where they are, I guess they're painting the walls on the inside or something. So, there are apartments ahead of us in the alphabet that are being renovated, and there are apartments behind us in the alphabet that haven't been renovated yet. But which ones have been renovated and which ones haven't been renovated seems a little random. So just because the people below us got their 1 month notice last week does not necessarily mean that we're going to get our 1 month notice this week. It's really just a case of wait and see. So I don't know. I'm still banking on the fact that probably the first or second week of March is when we'll be doing our big renovation move. So we're just going to have to wait and see, whether or not that's coming, when that's coming, if it's coming. Hopefully it's later than sooner so that I can get through my surgery and my recovery and my adjustment period without having to do it in the middle of all this other stuff. That would be nice. I would very much appreciate that. In other big change news for the future, I am being let go of my YouTube network, my MCN. For those of you who don't remember, way back in, we'll say, 2011, 2012, somewhere around there, I started monetizing my YouTube channel. I picked an MCN, a multi-channel network called Fullscreen. There's a whole big long story here. I'm not going to tell it on this podcast because it's a very long story. It's a very, very long story. And you don't really need to know it right now, but all you need to know is that I joined Fullscreen in 2012, maybe late 2011. And then in 2017, when we moved out here, I did this stream, right, where I wanted to make sure that my internet was good, that I wanted to make sure my computer was fixed and operational. Actually, I think this was 2018, really. But I wanted to make sure that my computer was fixed and operational and that I'd done everything right and that, I was back, essentially. This was me saying, hey, here's a stream that show that I'm back and that I'm set up and that I'm good, that I can do this. And what I ended up doing in that stream was I streamed like Crazy Taxi, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, all these games with licensed soundtracks, which obviously triggered a lot of content IDs on the YouTube archive of that, and caused Fullscreen to panic, and they fired me, right? I wasn't with Fullscreen anymore. They said, you're too high risk, you're triggering all these content IDs, you might be bad news for us. So I very quickly wanted to find a new MCN, a new YouTube network to sign up to, and I picked Screenwave Media. And if you don't know who Screenwave Media is, they are founded by one of the original people that founded the AVGN company Cinemassacre. They manage AVGN, they manage Some Call Me Johnny, Blame Society, if you remember Chad Vader, that's those guys. A bunch of like Team 4-Star is Screenwave. It really seemed like a good place for me to go at the time. And, they were very welcoming, they were very warm. It just seemed like a really good fit for me. And I've been there for probably a good 2 years, maybe closer to 3. And, I was having a real fun time there. And then, it was about 3 weeks ago, they sent me a notice that they were letting me go. Not really saying why, they're not obligated to say why. It's not really their job. There's probably like NDA stuff that they don't want to talk about why they're letting me go. I can only really assume why, and I think it's just because last year was a hard year, like a really hard year. I've been talking about it, on and off for the last couple months now. The algorithm hasn't been kind to me for a lot of different reasons. Part of that, I think, is because I uploaded so many unlisted videos last year. I was kind of treating my YouTube channel as just still like a personal dumping ground, as it were, where I could just upload whatever I wanted without really caring about whether or not it was a big popular thing for my channel, making it like a show or whatever. It was just, hey, here's some random gameplay footage. It's unlisted. I'm going to send this link to like 2 friends, and they're going to be the only 2 people that watch this video. And I think that affected how the algorithm saw my channel. So that when I finally, got it together and shook off the depression of 2020 and really went for it, really finally did like a properly produced video, properly edited, properly everything, the algorithm said, nobody cares about you. And that Jurassic Park video, the properly edited, produced video, still hasn't even broken 1,000 views. And we're talking about, this time last year, that Sonic 3 video, those two Sonic 3 videos were doing, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 views. And now, this time this year, I put out a new edited video, and it's not even breaking 1,000 views. And I've had, 4, 5, 6, 7 people now tell me that that Jurassic Park video never even showed up in their subscriptions feed. The algorithm just totally passed me over. It did not care. So as far as YouTube is concerned, my channel is probably dead, or at least close to dead, which I assume led Screenwave Media to kicking me out, because the one thing I did end up getting out of my channel manager, or I don't even think it was out of my channel manager, I think it was in the email they sent me that they were, letting me go, was that they were trying to focus more on channels that were still growing, or they were trying to focus, like there was a specific, like they mentioned something about growth, and that my channel did not meet the kind of growth they were looking for. Which I take to mean that the algorithm screwed me over, and that, I'm being punished for all kinds of things, really. I mean, like, it's not even a secret that I've been running my mouth for like 2 or 3 months now about how I do what I want to do, and, sometimes I do things that my fans want me to do, and sometimes I don't, and, just all this mess of not really knowing what to do with my YouTube channel, or even knowing what to do with my YouTube channel, but then not doing it because I want to do what I want to do. I want to do things on my own terms, let's say, right? I don't make shows, I just make weird one-off video essays. Or just something, I don't even know. But it's a big mess. And I'm paying the price for it, which, fair enough. And look, I don't even want to say that it's a bad split, right? Screenwave Media treated me like gold, like straight up, like they were an amazing channel network to be a part of. They sent me Christmas cards every year. Fullscreen never did that. They would send me chocolates every year. That's part of the reason why, at least at first, if you were paying attention to my Twitter, I was really broken up about this. Like, at some point, like I was almost on the verge of tears, right? Because Screenwave has been so nice to me. They sent me a Christmas card this year, like 2 weeks before the notice that I was being kicked out. This absolutely beautiful Christmas card on this really heavy, nice paper, and it's got this like gold foil embossing. It's just this big collage of all their channel icons that they're proud of. All the people networked with them, right? And that's where you see, Team 4 Star, Some Call Me Johnny, Blame Society. Here, let me pull the card out. It's right here on my desk. Whoa, whoops. Well, that's on the floor now. Who all do we got here? The icons I can pick out. Retroware TV. Melpontro, if you know the Sonic modding scene. Vine Sauce is in here. Like I said, Team 4 Star. Oh, excuse me. AVGN, obviously. Port Center. And just like among all these people, all these these famous YouTubers that I think of and I look up to and all this, there's my channel icon in there with them. And it felt like this really great honor to be part of something bigger than myself. It was kind of like this validation for me, right? It was like, it said I was important enough to be part of something bigger. It's very easy to sort of Because I mean, like, imposter syndrome is a problem out there today, right? Where people don't think they can do something because they think that, they're lying to themselves and they're lying to the world and everything else. And just the fact that Screenwave thought I was good enough to be part of their network was a big self-esteem boost. And getting the news that they were kicking me out was there's no bones about it. It was devastating. It was really devastating because, it's suddenly this validation that I've had for all these years is gone. I have to validate myself now. And you may not have picked up on this, but I'm not very good at that. I've been talking a lot about maybe having ADHD, about going through these big, long bouts of depression and anxiety and, becoming a basket case and shutting down and everything else. And it's just, 2020 is what 2020 was. TSSC shut down. I got kicked out of Screenwave. I feel sort of like I'm back at square one again. But I can't hold it against Screenwave. They're a business. They have their own bottom line to think about. They have a bigger picture to worry about than just what me as an individual means to them. So I don't blame them. And, talking with my channel manager about, what did I do wrong? How can I improve on things? He straight up told me, he said, if you get things together and it's looking up again, reapply to Screenwave and I'll probably get back in. And, if you're worried about my channel, if you're saying, oh, what are you going to do? Are you still going to get money from YouTube? The hope is that yes. I'm not being thrown out into the cold for, it's not going to be a thing where I don't get money from YouTube anymore. This just means that instead of getting my earnings through Screenwave or Full Screen or, just another YouTube channel network, I will be getting money directly from YouTube itself. I will be getting money through Google AdSense, through YouTube AdSense, which has pros and cons. If you've ever used AdSense before, you know that there's like a certain earnings threshold that you have to meet that really wasn't a problem with Screenwave. So it's going to be a little bit different, but in theory, not much is going to change. I might get paid in bigger increments, more spread apart, but I will still hopefully be getting money. We're just going to have to wait and see. I think the email said that my last payment from Screenwave will be March. So figure, the end of this month will basically be the last payment I get from them. And then I'll be disconnected from the Screenwave network and I'll be on my own. I'll be, YouTube AdSense man. And a lot of people will tell you that, it's fine being on YouTube AdSense. There was a big article a few years ago from Slow Beef, Slow Beef of Something Awful, Slow Beef of the inventor of the video Let's Play. He would know what's going on in the YouTube space of monetizing gameplay videos. He's knowledgeable about that kind of stuff. And I think it was either for Kotaku or for Polygon. He wrote this big article that was basically, a YouTube channel network isn't all that it's cracked up to be anymore. It was back in 2011, 2012, those early days of YouTube monetization. You absolutely needed to have a channel network to make money on YouTube. Because back then, YouTube absolutely unflinchingly ironclad required that you had proper legal documentation of ownership of all the footage you were using. And by signing up through a channel network, they would handle all the legal documentation for you. They would assume responsibility. So, a channel network became this very easy way for you to make money on YouTube. And that's when you got, the rise of guys like Polaris, Machinima, Screenwave, Full Screen, Maker Studios, just like a bunch of different places. Zoom In TV, that was another one. And over time, I think YouTube has realized that they're actually kind of losing a lot of money to channel networks. That's the other big part. That's the other side of this coin, is that I think YouTube is trying to sabotage channel networks on purpose. That they're trying to drive more and more people to just use vanilla YouTube AdSense, because YouTube gets a bigger cut of the money from that. And this was my theory even way back when Fullscreen kicked me off in 2017. Because the entire reason that Fullscreen kicked me off is because a few months before that, YouTube had implemented this system that would tell channel networks about, like, problem users, right? It would give, like, danger estimates based on which users it thought would be most likely to commit copyright infringement, to upload illegal content to YouTube. And part of this system was that if a channel network had too many dangerous users under its umbrella, YouTube would actually start penalizing the channel network for intentionally housing potentially dangerous users. And, so I did this big stream under Fullscreen with all this licensed music, right? Crazy Taxi, you've got The Offspring, you've got Bad Religion, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, you probably have all kinds of popular music bands of the early 2000s in that game. I think after I finished that stream, the YouTube archive said I tripped like 37 different content IDs just for all the different songs in all those games. So if you're talking about YouTube back then developing a warning system and penalizing channel networks for potentially dangerous users, doing that stream and getting 37 content IDs for one video probably made Fullscreen panic dramatically. Like, oh my gosh, this guy is a threat. Get him out of here. And that's why Fullscreen terminated me. But I don't think I have such an excuse this time with Screenwave. Like, maybe I do, right? The Jurassic Park video, I've talked about this before. I used like clips of the movie in that video, and there was one clip in particular with John Hammond comparing Jurassic Park to the opening of Disneyland. And that was a really difficult scene to use, but it was really, in the context of the video, it was very important that I reference that scene. But every time I would upload a version of the video review with that scene, Universal would attach a content ID to it, right? So I actually ended up uploading like 5 or 6 or 7 different test versions of that video of just that segment until I figured out a way to work my way around the detection algorithm. And, that ended up being like, doing this extreme zoom close up in the scene and, panning around using Vegas and things like that, just to make sure that the detection algorithm didn't see it as what the scene actually was, while also still conveying the information that I wanted to give out of that scene. So who knows, maybe uploading all those test versions of the video while I tried to figure out, how much to crop, how much to zoom, things like that, maybe that's what got me kicked off of Screenwave, but I think not. Because when I applied to Screenwave back in 2017, 2018, whatever, I told them what had happened with Fullscreen. I told them that, they'd probably kicked me off because I did this stream of all these, licensed soundtracks in video games. And Screenwave told me, oh, no, don't worry about that. That's fine. We've got you covered. So I don't know. I'm making like the world's biggest shrug right now because I don't know. All I know is that 2020 sucked and I did not do a good job of maintaining my YouTube channel. I did not do a very good job of making new videos. I was kind of throwing my weight around a little bit, probably a little too much. And here we are. Here we are in the gutter. I shouldn't be that harsh. This isn't the end of the world. This is more of a wait and see. We'll figure out what's coming next. Because the other thing, the other part of that Screenwave termination email is they said, we're looking for channels that are focused on YouTube, like exclusively on YouTube. And that, every now and then they have to let channels go that aren't entirely focused on YouTube. And yeah, that kind of that kind of like describes me perfectly, right? You know, I do YouTube, but I also make video games, I also do music, I also write. You know, I'm like it says in my Twitter profile, I am a jack of all trades and a master of nothing important. So the fact that Screenwave would look at my channel and say, this guy does not have the dedication that we're looking for. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I can see that. I don't blame them. They treated me very nicely. I really like the chocolate they sent me for Christmas last year. I really love this Christmas card. It's very bittersweet that they would let me go, but I understand. I get it. It is what it is, you know? I can't be that broken up about it. I mean, I can be, like I said, you know, I for the last like so many years, I've had this feeling that I was good enough to be a part of something greater. And now I am left to be that greater thing by myself. I have to prove to myself that I'm good enough. I can't just rely on what other people tell me. And that's a big hurdle to cross. But I'll cross it. You know, I kind of don't have any choice. In lighter news, my cousin and I completed the first 6 or 7 episodes of our Max Payne 2 Let's Play. I think I mentioned this last podcast that we were gearing up to do that. I think it was like literally later that day we were going to do our first recording session. Well, I think the recording session went really, really well, and the first 6 or 7 episodes are, you know, chopped up, queued up, ready to be uploaded to YouTube, or I guess technically speaking, they are already uploaded to YouTube. We've been going back and forth figuring out thumbnails and episode titles and trying to schedule our second recording session so that we can finish out the game and things like that. But I think a lot of that is going to come after the dental surgery and probably after I move, after the renovation, rather. There's just too many things up in the air right now. And, you know, my cousin Matt also just got a brand new puppy that he's, you know, dealing with training and teaching and, you know, sort of getting used to getting him acclimated to their house and things like that. You know, it's very much, you know, we need things to stabilize a little bit more before we go in for our second recording session. And we kind of wanted the whole thing recorded and in the can before we started posting them so that we don't end up with like a Matrix Path of Neo scenario or like, you know, our old Dead Space Let's Play where we post like the first 3 episodes and then the Let's Play goes on pause for, you know, weeks or months or whatever. But like I said, I think that Let's Play turned out really well. It's actually really interesting. In the process of going through and titling all the episodes and, you know, figuring out thumbnails and things like that, going back and watching part of our original Max Payne 1 Let's Play and how sleepy we sound and how quiet we are. And we don't really, like, at least in those first few episodes, we sound kind of nervous. You know, we don't really sound like we want to be there. We just sound very, like I said, very sleepy. We sound like we're going to fall asleep. It's just very much, we're kind of talking like this. And oh boy, Max Payne, everybody. Like, that's an exaggeration, but that's kind of what it is. And it's just really wild to listen to the Max Payne 2 episodes we've made, where the both of us just sound so much more animated, and like we've grown so much as people. We've gotten so much more comfortable around microphones and talking over games, even though, you know, technically speaking, we haven't recorded a Let's Play in like 7 or 8 or 9 years. Like, it's been a really long time. And we just kind of, like, maybe I'm overselling it, but it really just feels like we fell into place and it was perfect. Or about as close to perfect as I think we're ever going to get. And like, surprisingly, we didn't have like any technical problems either. Like, oh my gosh, recording those other Let's Plays we did 7 years ago. I mean, there's a whole Matrix Path of Neo Let's Play that never got posted because the files got corrupted. You know, we had so many technical the whole Max Payne Let's Play, like the second half of that Let's Play, my microphone is in and out and it dies at certain points and you can't really hear me. We had so many technical problems on those original Let's Plays, and we just jumped into Max Payne 2, and it was like the smoothest, easiest recording experience I think of either of our lives. It just went like butter. It was amazing. So that's coming in a month, another month, maybe 2 months. I don't know. But it's good. I like it. I think it turned out really well, or at least the first half turned out really well. I'm probably jinxing the whole thing right now, probably putting a curse on the whole second half of that Let's Play, where it's going to be a disaster and a nightmare from here on out. But that first half, oh man. I don't want to say it's going to be like the best Let's Play ever made or anything like that, because it's not. But as far as like me and him go, the channel that we tried to put together so many years ago, everything went smooth enough that like now I'm sitting here thinking, man, what else could we Let's Play? If it's going to be this easy every single time, what other games can we do? It's kind of like getting this excitement back in me again. Like, oh boy, we can do Let's Plays again. Discord is really good for this. We don't have to worry about having a mixer. We don't have to worry about all this other stuff. You just turn the recording on and go. It's magic. And there's like so little latency. Ugh, I could gush about that for a long time. But this first segment of the podcast is an hour long already. And I could use a break. I don't know what it is about talking. Like, not only does my throat get sore, I mean, that much is obvious. You know, I'm talking nonstop straight for an hour. Of course, my throat's going to get sore. But for some reason, my nose gets stuffed up too. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been slowly sounding a little more nasally as the podcast goes on. So I need to go like blow my nose, you know, drink a little bit more water. I've been taking sips here and there, but you know, so it goes. And then we're going to come back with a middle segment that is probably about Game of the Year, or at least as close to Game of the Year as I ever get. It's basically just going to be a big long recap of everything I played in 2020. If that sounds, wait a minute. Oh, no. Back up. What do my notes say? The Patreon poll results. Oh my gosh. I almost forgot. I came so close to forgetting. That's what I was doing. Like, probably like 20 minutes ago in this podcast, I was clicking around trying to find where I linked the Patreon post from my polls. Oh, but I'm going to have to log in to look at the actual results. So give me a minute here, folks. Firefox typically takes up like so many system resources that even when I just record the podcast, you know, I closed Firefox to free up all this RAM. Because, you know, I've turned into like this monster that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different Firefox windows open, and probably at least 5 to 10 tabs per window. You know, this has turned into just like this insane mess of just tabs. It's borderline unusable at times. So this is gonna take me a sec while I tabulate the results here. If you didn't know, by the time you listen to this podcast, you know, it might not be a very good idea to go vote on this poll, but you can still vote on it. If you go to my Patreon, I'm running a poll because, you know, like I'm talking about not really knowing what I should be doing and things like that. I do have obviously ideas of places I want to go next, videos I want to produce next, you know, games I want to develop next, things like that. But we're kind of at this crossroads where I can go in multiple different directions. So I put up a poll on my Patreon. I put 2 different polls up. One was public, one was private. One was, you know, the private one is for people who pay for my Patreon. And like, I'll just straight up say it here. If you pay for my Patreon, your votes matter more to me. When I tabulate these results, The public votes will all count for one vote per one person. When it comes to the Patreon donor version, it's the exact same poll, but every individual person that votes in that one, their votes will be counted for 5 people. So basically, if you're a Patreon donor, you do 1 vote, that vote actually counts for 5 votes. So, it's the sort of thing where, like, if the public wants me to do something and they really, like, dogpile into the poll enough, they can get me to do something, but the votes from the people who pay me matter more. They will dominate the polls just a little bit harder. So give me a second here. Well, I say give me a second. For you at home, this will be nearly instant. But for me, I'm going to sit here and tabulate up these poll results. Okay, tally. Well, here, actually. No, not yet. Okay, so the poll options were, for number 1, focus on finally getting the Sonic Forces video done ASAP. As you know, I've been kind of talking about this for the last 3 years, trying to figure out what that video is, because, it can't just be a normal video review at this point. It can't be like the Sonic Mania video. It has to be a little bit more of like an essay. And, over the last, we'll say 4, 5, 6 months, I finally sort of like zeroed in on a topic that I think would be interesting to talk about with regarding to Sonic Forces. And, I've been making forward progress on writing out the script. It's kind of a messy script. It's probably like the first script I've ever written where it's gone through like this gigantic process of refinement, right? But I've been talking it up for months and months and months and months, So that's our first poll option, the Sonic Forces video. The second poll option is the Big Nights documentary. Again, this is a video I've been talking up for years. I wrote out a very large, very long, very detailed script of a documentary on Nights into Dreams for the Sega Saturn, specifically Nights into Dreams. I don't really talk about Journey of Dreams. It's just about that Sega Saturn game. That's our second option, the Nights documentary. The third option was the Shenmue video. Gosh, yeah, I need to end this podcast soon. I'm getting like frogs in my throat here. The third option was the Shenmue video, which was... Anyway, the third option was the Shenmue video, which again, been talking this up for years. A patron and friend mentioned remastering some of my old video reviews, kind of giving them a do-over, revisiting them as it were. And one of the first ideas I had was revisiting the Shenmue video, because the original Shenmue video was like, it was very much like a nothing video, right? I wanted to do a video on Shenmue, but then if you watch that video now, it is very much, I don't really say anything. I just kind of summarize what the game is, and then the video ends. This would be a much more in-depth script, much more, very much more of a video essay, as it were, sort of explaining why I like Shenmue, why Shenmue was important, things like that. Kind of like a perspective I haven't really seen about Shenmue out there in the public. That is our third option. Our fourth option is, oh geez. Oh boy. Gotta finish this quick. My mouth is falling apart. My voice is dying. Our fourth option is the April Fool's joke that I didn't finish for 2020. The Bubsy fan game. A lot of people were very excited about when I posted this on Twitter. I still get retweets and likes on that tweet to this day. Tweet. That's our fourth option, is finishing the Bubsy project. That means building out at least one more level and like a boss fight, right? What are we on? Fifth option is to get back to work on Overbite. I made a promise back in 2016 that if I raised $100, I would release a full version of Overbite on Steam for sale. And, within a month, probably less, I had that $100, because that's how much it cost to register for Steam Greenlight back in the day. And Overbyte passed the requirements for Steam Greenlight. I have a Steam developer account. All I really have to do is build Overbyte. I have a big design document ready to go that probably actually needs to be edited down and, cleaned up a lot because it's full of 5 years, basically, of just random ideas that would pop into my head. And I'd say, that'd be good for Overbyte. And I'd put it in the design document. That is our 5th option. Get back to work on Overbyte. The 6th option in this poll was to get the old archival reviews that I wrote for TSSZ and post them on bltn.net. Obviously, TSSZ, it's gone. The website, you can't even access the website anymore. Tristan finally, I don't know if he stopped paying for the web hosting or whatever, but the website is gone. You can't access it anymore. I was smart enough that I built my own archive of every article I thought sounded important. Months and months and months ago, I saved, it's like 600 megabytes of TSSC news articles, including every review I ever wrote for the website. With the eventual thing is that I would, get those reviews posted up on my personal game writing website, bltn.net. And I haven't done that yet. It's just a matter of going through and making sure they are formatted correctly for the blog theme that I have on bltn.net. That is our 6th option, I think it is. It's 6th or 7th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is our 6th option. Our 7th option is open a Discord. I've had people request that I open a Discord chat in the past. A friend of mine just opened her own Discord a few months ago, so it's been on my mind. I came real close just a few weeks ago to registering for a server just to see what would happen. But, I feel kind of weird about that. Having an entire Discord dedicated to me feels weird. There's a lot of talk these days about parasocial relationships and things like that. And just, I don't know, I'm not against it. Obviously I came really close. It just feels weird that people would come to a Discord about me, about this guy who writes really long, boring blogs on the internet about Sonic the Hedgehog and, fails to make a successful YouTube channel and then takes money from people to put games up on Steam and then never does anything with it. I don't feel like I would be worth having a Discord about me. But at the same time, having a Discord, it'd open up all kinds of other things, casual streams, maybe like movie nights, things like that. I don't know. These are distant ideas. I'm not even going to talk about them. Just very edge case possibilities. I don't know. That's our 7th option. Open a Discord. And then basically the final option is do whatever you want. I'm along for the ride regardless. That's basically your option of, I don't care what you do. Just do whatever you want, which is basically what I've been doing. But, obviously doing that seems to have gotten me in trouble. So, if at all possible, I would like to choose something to do next. So those are our what did I say, 8 options, 7 options? Is the Sonic Forces video, the Knights video, the Shenmue video, finish Bubsy, get back to work on Overbyte, post the archival reviews on bltn.net, open a Discord, and do whatever you want. So the poll results are actually pretty surprising to me. The number 1 option with 28 votes was to do the Knights documentary next. That, I knew people were interested in that. For as much as I've been talking it up, you kind of get a sense that people would like to see that. And it's definitely the sort of thing that I think would really be a benefit to me. Because I feel like this documentary that I've written goes a little bit more in depth than most of the videos out there on the internet about Nights into Dreams. There are different videos out there. There's like a Did You Know Gaming video about Nights into Dreams. But it's only it's like 12 minutes long, 17 minutes long. It's not very long. It's not very in-depth. It's about as in-depth as you would expect from a Did You Know Gaming video, right? So that's top of the list. That's what people want to see from me the most, is the Knights documentary. And then coming in second place is finally getting the Sonic Forces video done. I kind of expected that would probably place pretty high. That I promised that back in 2017, and I've been talking it again. This is something I've been talking up a lot, especially over the last few months, about finally getting that together, finally focusing that down to a point where I can make a video about that before Sega announces, or at the very least before Sega releases their next Sonic game. Because it feels like, if I don't get this out before then, it's going to be kind of a moot point. Because that's kind of what the video essay is about. It's about talking about Sonic Forces in the context of the history of Sonic game design and how we ended up at Sonic Forces. And it seems a little weird to put out a video like that after whatever it is Sega has coming next. In third place with 13 votes is the Shenmue video. Again, I kind of expected that would be a little high. It's something I've been talking up for a really long time. It's a script that is basically done. I just have to start recording footage for it. I just have to do voiceover for it. I'd like to play Shenmue 3 before I record that video, though, just in case something happens in Shenmue 3 that changes what I say in the Shenmue video. But increasingly, I try and avoid hearing what other people have to say about Shenmue 3 because I want to experience it as raw and as blindly as I can, but the little bits and pieces I pick up on it here and there is that Shenmue 3 is just more Shenmue. They don't change the formula that dramatically for better or worse. So, I don't know. That's a bridge we'll cross. Coming in fourth place, 12 votes, is it doesn't matter what I do next. You people are just along for the ride, which is nice to know in a sense, but also it helps to keep me focused. Again, maybe I have ADHD. Maybe I have a problem with indecision. Maybe I have a problem with getting distracted. Having a list of things that I need to do helps keep me on track. So, I appreciate that you support me, that comes in at basically the very middle of the list. I'm very happy that people are, that enough people are just along for the ride. Coming in at fifth place with 7 votes is Open a Discord. Again, I just kind of went through everything. I came very close to opening a Discord not that long ago, within the last couple weeks. But I don't know. It feels like a weird thing. If this was more like an overwhelming thing, like all of a sudden, it was like number 2 or number 1 or even number 3, I would be like, okay, maybe I should open a Discord. But if this is coming in at like the top of the bottom half of the list, I don't know. Coming in at, I already lost one. No, number 6th. Yes, number 6th is Finish Bubsy. I'm actually genuinely surprised how far down on the list this is. This is at number 6 at 6 votes. Like I said, that tweet, when I was tweeting about the video of getting the first level done in that Bubsy project, people were so excited for that. I said earlier that I still get retweets and likes on that tweet. I really, really expected this would place a lot higher. I figured this would be number 2 or even number 1, but seeing it down here almost at the bottom of the list is genuinely, legitimately shocking. People apparently don't really care that much if Bubsy gets finished and released or not. Or at least, not the people that follow me on Twitter where I was promoting this poll. Even though, I retweeted it 7 times. Hey, come here and vote on this poll. Just tell me what you want me to do next. And, a good 25 people voted in this poll. Probably more if you count patrons. It's probably, 30 or some amount more. Coming in at number 7, we're almost at the end of the list here, is get all my archival reviews up on bltn.net. Again, this kind of tied with finishing the Bubsy project at 6 votes at number 7. This one doesn't surprise me very much, getting those archival reviews up. Not the most important thing in the world. They are kind of very much like a time and place sort of thing, but it's just nice to have those to reference every now and then, right? To just be able to say, here's the review I wrote for this thing back in the day, and just be able to link that to people. But, obviously it's not that super important to get that done. And Tristan is working with, I think it's like Tails Channel or something. It's Last Minute Continue, that's right. He's working with them to get all the old archival TSSC news content up on their website. And presumably that would mean my reviews. So, technically if I just drag my feet long enough, it's not going to be that big of a problem. Those reviews will probably get archived somewhere else by someone else. That's just how it goes. And then very last, at the bottom of the list, also kind of a big surprise to me, with one single vote, is get back to work on Overbite. I guess people don't really care that much about Overbite, which is kind of a bummer. If you feel strongly about these results, if you think that you would like to change these results, even though I sat here and I just read them all out, these are not set in stone yet. If you would like to vote on this poll, even if you're listening to this on YouTube and it's the middle of March, go to patreon.com/blazehedgehog and look for the post that mentions the polls. Patreon donors get to vote. Their votes count for way more than the public votes, but the public votes, they can still swing things. So, get out there and vote, and you have until, like I said, with everything being so up in the air lately, between my dental surgery coming up, the renovation coming up, finishing up the Max Payne 2 Let's Play, everything else, getting set back up after the renovation is done, I'm probably not going to be in a position to act on this poll until April, until maybe even May. I mean, who even knows, right? Things are moving and shaking in directions I cannot necessarily directly control right now. And doing something like the Knights video would take so long. It would probably take me 3 or 4 months to record voiceover for that, to record video for that, to do artwork for that, create a shot list, all that stuff. It would probably take me 2, 3, 4 months to put that together if I started today. And being in the middle of all of that, in the middle of the surgery, in the middle of the renovation, especially the renovation, feels like it would be difficult, like it would create a problem. You kind of need to hit a flow on this kind of stuff, right? Where you start something, like you start the serious work and you don't stop until it's done. Otherwise, it can throw your whole direction of the video off. It can be kind of a mess. So I'm going to wait until the move is done, until the surgery is done, to figure all this out. And also because I'm genuinely worried that during the move, once again, my computer is going to break. Because I don't know how to safely transport that. I know I should probably take out the graphics card and stuff like that, because it's very, I don't know, flimsy or something, whatever you want to call it. But I don't have a box to put that in. I don't even think I have an electrostatic bag to put that in. So I don't know. Who knows? But we'll just say video projects are off until the renovation's done. That's just the long and short of it. My channel, as far as the YouTube algorithm is considered, is already dead. So it doesn't really matter that much if it stays dead for a little while longer. But that's it. That's the first podcast segment here. We're now at an hour and a half. This is usually how long my podcasts are total. But if it's going to be a long time until the next podcast, then you know what? Having a really long podcast to go out on just makes sense, So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get a drink of water, blow my nose, let my sinuses clear out for whatever weird reason. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about 2020 in review. All the video games I played, all the video games I didn't finish. We're going to talk about which was my favorite game. Hiccup. We're going to talk about my favorite video game of last year and all the other video games around it. So stay tuned for that.
I'm a mess, I body anything that take a breath. On my left is a problem, body bigger than myself.
Oh my gosh, I've already lost the tab. This segment is supposed to be Game of the Year stuff. But if I'm being like perfectly honest, I kind of like, this is one of the reasons why this podcast has taken me so long is because I built a web page to kind of catalog all the video games I played in 2020. Because, most Game of the Year segments on podcasts and in articles and things like that usually just focus on games that came out that year, right? But as, many years now I've been talking about this, I don't usually play a lot of games that come out in that specific calendar year. Like even working for TSSE, right? I'd play maybe 5 games a year. I'd review, like 5 games a year maximum. Brand new, retail, off-the-shelf games. So my Game of the Year list is generally just, whatever I was playing in that year. Last year, I don't know if it's because it was because of the pandemic or what, I played a lot of video games. Like probably I had the most productive video game year last year than maybe I've ever had, right? I talked about this before when TSSE shut down, right? I was starting to get burnt out because so many games were coming out and I was reviewing so many games for TSSE. I think between 2019 to 2020, there was like a 6-month period there at the end before TSSE shut down where I reviewed something like 17 games. And normally like 17 games would be, years worth of content for TSSE, and I'd done that much in just 6 months, or it was even like shorter than that. So, the 2020 was a packed year. I played a lot of video games last year. Not just 2020 releases, but just releases in general. So, once I compiled a list of everything I've done last year, it was significant. It was very significant. Even just, if we just count the games that I played and finished, it's like 30 games. It's like 19 games. It's not 30, but it's not nothing. Like here, let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I was right. It was exactly 19. And that's just games I finished. Normally, I don't finish games. If we start looking at the wider list of every single video game I played last year, we are talking, 120 games. Like people do challenges, right? It started, I think, with books maybe or movies where people would watch 50 movies in a year or read 50 books in a year. I almost beat, well, that's not true. I was going to say I almost beat 50 games last year. No, I didn't even beat half that. But point is, this is a big segment to tackle. Even just going through each game one by one, this would easily fill 3 or 4 hours. So I don't really know how we're going to tackle a Game of the Year segment. I guess just in general, the best place to start would be at the top. So at the top of the web page, I have listed the games I finished last year. Some of these were actually games that I was going to write reviews for TSSE until, TSSE shut down all of a sudden overnight, basically. So like top of the list here is Streets of Rage 4, right? That's a game, like, I think I talked about this at the time, but I'm not really like a big beat 'em up fan. Beat 'em ups are fine, they're okay. It's just that they're very repetitive, very boring games. Like kind of like the definition of a quarter muncher, right? Where it's just, you have like these really super simple inputs, like one punch button, one jump button, and that's kind of it. But the Sega Genesis Streets of Rage games kind of buck that trend a little bit. And that's like the other problem with beat 'em ups is that, you're kind of just fighting like the same 5 guys in every single level in every single game, right? Streets of Rage, like the classic Streets of Rage games, broke that up with like a lot of mini bosses and sub bosses and just like more unique enemy types, right? You'd have like a dozen or 2 dozen enemies across any given Streets of Rage game, and it kind of kept things feeling a little more fresh than, say, Final Fight or like Turtles in Time. These supposedly classic beat 'em up games. Streets of Rage 4 was a game where my first time through it, I didn't really love it that much, but it was, like most beat 'em ups are, it was more fun with a friend, a lot more fun with a friend, really. And kind of like as we get some distance from Streets of Rage 4, I've really started to come around on the game a lot more. As far as beat 'em ups go, it's pretty good. It's probably one of the better beat 'em ups the genre has to offer, like, period. It's definitely pretty good. like that's the long and the short of it. It's definitely pretty good. It definitely feels like it is worthy of the name Streets of Rage 4, though it's been a long time since I've played Streets of Rage Remake, the fan game. I do definitely remember thinking that Streets of Rage Remake was probably one of the best beat 'em ups ever made at the time, but I haven't played that in like 6 years, so I don't know. Like, take your pick, really. It's one of these 2 Streets of Rage games, but Streets of Rage 4 is just like the artwork is very beautiful, as you might expect from Lizard Cube. The gameplay is a little slow, but I think it actually got patched recently so that everyone moves just a little bit faster, because it was a little sluggish, especially because like certain characters can't even run, right? But I do think, like, I'd have to double check, actually. I feel like there definitely was a patch, like semi-recently, like within the last 3 months, where they talked about buffing up the movement speed. Is this like actually going to tell me? Community Hub? Is that going to be anything? Something, end of the year. I don't know. This is going to take too long to look at. But I do seem to remember that they were buffing certain things. Oh, here it is, the balance patch. September 7th, 2020. I think they just went through and they made it better. But the way Steam displays all this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a nightmare to look at. Just take it with a grain of salt. I think the game got patched. That's it. Rather than just go down this list, well, we could. I realize this segment, because the way my brain works is that I keep jumping around without finishing a thought. That's what it's like to live in my mind. I'm sorry if you find that frustrating or annoying or anything like that. I was going to say we could just go through a highlight reel, but we will just, talk about every single game I finished, I guess. I finished Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Not all 3 games, just the first Crash Bandicoot game. I still think that's a pretty fun game. It's very difficult. I'm not, I've talked about this before. I'm not exactly sold on the way those remasters look and sound. I think they go for a little bit too much realism. Like, Crash Bandicoot did not need a fur shader, and like all of the sound effects. I think I remember talking about this semi-recently. All the sound effects are like almost a parody of what they should sound like. There was a YouTube video by Jake Kaufman, Vert, the musician who did like a lot of Way Forward stuff, where it was modern sound design in retro games. And it was like all of these like, impressive like Hollywood explosions, this very like, slick modern sound design that like you'd find in like a Call of Duty game. And that's what the sound design in the Crash Bandicoot remaster really reminds me of. Instead of sounding like Looney Tunes, it sounds a little more like Call of Duty. It sounds and looks just a little too realistic. And that's like the main problem I have with that remaster, is that just stylistically speaking, I don't think it gets the point of what Crash Bandicoot is supposed to look like. And there's like this really weird disconnect where he's supposed to be this wacky, crazy cartoon character, but like I said, he has fur shading, he has all this realistic lighting. He doesn't like his poses and his animations don't exaggerate quite enough. He doesn't look wacky enough. He did like nothing. It's just I still stand by most of Crash Bandicoot 1 and most of Crash Bandicoot 2 being good games, but those remasters are they miss the mark just a little bit. Obviously, last year was the big year of the Super Mario 64 the Super Mario 64 source code decompilation project, which naturally led to the PC port of Super Mario 64, the unofficial native PC port. And I probably like speed ran Super Mario 64 going through that PC port. I mean, I probably cleared that game inside of like 2 or 3 days. I mean, I really just tore through it. That was a pretty good port. It's nicer to have native PC ports because emulation, there's always going to be like input latency while it translates your button presses from one coding language to another. So having like a raw native PC port really helped in that regard. And it's good, it opens the door much wider for mods to come in and modify source code and add new models. And I mainly played the PC port of Super Mario 64 with something called Render 96 installed, which is, a model pack that's supposed to make Mario look like old school promo art from the era. It gives him like all these high def, like high detail polygon models to where it looks really nice. It doesn't look modern, but it's not trying to look modern. It's trying to look like what the ideal of 1996 CGI looked like. And it is, for the most part, Render 96 was pretty good. But it does sort of highlight the problem with the PC port of Super Mario 64 is that, for one, I've beaten the game. I don't want to go back to it right now. But Render 96 keeps putting out new updates where they update textures, where they update animations, they update like the whole thing. Like the problem with Render 96 is that their Bowser model sucked. Like it was terrible. It looked like the proportions were all off. It didn't look right. And like the primary update they've been doing to that Render 96 model pack for Super Mario 64 is trying to get Bowser to look right. And it's the sort of thing where I don't want to bother, because getting all of this set up is kind of a headache. It requires you to install basically like a coding environment onto your PC, because the whole process is that you grab a Super Mario 64 ROM file, you feed it into this decompiler, which decompiles everything down into raw individual files and raw source code and everything like that. And then through the compiler environment for like coding your own games and software and stuff, you recompile a native Windows executable for Super Mario 64. And that process, that whole like, it's like a 5-step process where you have to, grab the ROM file, decompile it, install the compiler, install the coding environment, install the compiler software, because there's a special like Super Mario 64 builder software that you run that then queries a server and pulls down a list of mods. You pick your mods, and then you build a version of the game for Windows. And doing all of that, it's not like impossibly difficult, but being, 3 or 6 or 9 months out from this, where I haven't touched any of this software in a really long time, the idea of updating my build of Super Mario 64 for the PC, doing all this all over again by hand, is kind of a headache, and I don't really want to deal with that. But if I want to get like the latest bug fixes, because the PC port wasn't 100% perfect, so again, the people who wrote the decompiler and the compiler have actually improved the PC port of Super Mario 64. They've fixed bugs with certain mods and things like that. There's no easy, automatic, simple process to update your executable. It's not like Steam where it automatically updates for you. And it's not even like getting a game off itch.io where you just download a new executable and extract a zip file. There's this big, long, multi-stage process to getting fresh copies of the decompilation, to compiling a fresh copy of the new compilation, and it's just, like maybe 5 or 10 years from now when I feel like replaying Super Mario 64 from beginning to end again, maybe it'll be easier, maybe I'll be more willing to go through all this trouble again, but I just keep seeing like trailers and stuff go around Twitter for new versions of this Render 96 mod pack and all the other mods that are coming out for the PC port of Super Mario 64. Like someone made a mod for the PC version that basically turns it into Super Mario Odyssey, where you get Cappy and you can throw Cappy out and, capture and possess different enemies in Super Mario 64. And that sounds really cool. But also that means interfacing with this whole conversion process that just sucks. There's no easier way to put it. It just sucks. But yeah, that was like separate from all the headache of getting this all set up. The act of playing a native PC port of Super Mario 64 was pretty fun. I played and finished Halo 2 Anniversary last year. If you remember, that was a surprisingly delightful experience. Halo 2 is not exactly a very good game. It's considered to be one of the black sheeps of the Halo franchise. Probably more so than basically any other Halo game ever made. It is probably widely regarded as probably the worst Halo game in the franchise. But then again, I haven't played Halo 4 or Halo 5. I know those games can be kind of divisive. But Halo 2 is definitely the worst Halo game I've ever played, and Halo 2 Anniversary doesn't fix everything that's wrong with Halo 2, but it does go a long way to polishing that turd about as well as you could hope for. All of the new cinematics, all the timing on all the dialogue and all the scene direction really got punched up in a way that feels really nice. I became way more invested in the storyline than I did when I originally played Halo 2 back in 2006. It was a good time-ish. Because it's still, at its heart, it's still Halo 2, which means, the level design really drags. Some of the weapons don't feel especially great. There's just a lot of, just really wasting your time as a game design. That's Halo 2 kind of in a nutshell. But it wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. And I attribute that a lot to the remastered visuals, to the remastered cinematics, the redone music. They fundamentally did not change Halo 2's core experience, but they just made it feel so much nicer, so much better. Everything awkward about it hits just a little bit nicer. Halo 2 Anniversary, big thumbs up, played that on the PC in the Master Chief Collection. Then we have some replays here. I replayed and finished Nights into Dreams. I replayed and finished Flat Out Ultimate Carnage, which is like a destruction derby racing game that's okay, but not especially spectacular. It's very much from that sort of we'll say it's like Burnout kind of, right? Except that it's not as elegant as Burnout is. It's very sort of difficult to play after a certain point, because the whole thing is that you wreck into the environment and you wreck into other cars to build up a boost meter. But after a certain point, after the first lap or whatever, after the whole track has become trashed and there's nothing left to crash through, it becomes increasingly difficult to fill up your boost meter. which, can lead to a lot of frustration. And it's also from that era of gaming, 2005, 2006, 2007, where physics engines were becoming like the big hot new fad. And what that means is that like there's this kind of this element of chaos in the Flatout series where it's so obsessed with its physics engine that you can crash through like a pile of boxes and a box gets stuck under your front tire and that causes you to spin out. And there's nothing you really could have done about that because it was so chaotic, it was so crazy. There was no way to prevent that, there was no way to predict that. But that's just flat out. That's just kind of something you have to put up with. And as you get towards the end of that game, problems like that, problems with the physics engine, become more and more and more common, and it gets to be really insanely frustrating. It becomes a game where you see the first lap of a race over and over and over and over again. Because, you get to lap 2, you get to lap 3, and some tiny little thing catches you the wrong way, you spin out, and there's no way to catch up. There's no way to fix it. You just get, obliterated, basically. It's not one of my favorite racing games ever made, but it's fun enough, it's fun enough that this was even a replay, that I've played through this game before, and I wanted to play through it again. It's very far from perfect. I replayed Donkey Kong Country. I did that on the Japanese version of the game because that's very easily accessible on the Switch now, thanks to the Super Nintendo app. I played through Donkey Kong Country 2, which ended up being like surprisingly delightful. For many years now, I've been very down on Donkey Kong Country 2 because it's a much longer, much more involved game than Donkey Kong Country 1. And, when you're playing this on an emulator on a PC, it's really easy to kind of get overwhelmed by outside distractions, by instant messaging programs, social media, YouTube videos, whatever, and, kind of lose focus on the game and sort of kind of succumb to a poor attention span, I guess you'd say. But for some reason on the Switch app, like this time around, it hit me a lot better. It was a much smoother game to play, let's say. It was significantly less frustrating to finish. I had a lot more fun, and it kind of re-elevated Donkey Kong Country 2 back up into this status of being, maybe one of my favorite Donkey Kong Country games. Yoshi's Island, I replayed through that. I initially wanted to go for the 100% clear, which is something I've never done before, but the 100% clear in Yoshi's Island turns out to be something for monsters to do. There are glitches in that game that kind of make it hard to do 100% clear. It is very deliberately structured so that there are things you could very easily miss and not even realize you missed them, which makes 100% clear basically almost impossible. It is a game where Nintendo said, if you want to do the full clear in Yoshi's Island, you better work for it. It's going to take you hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in the post game. And I took one look at that, and, after spending 20, 30, 40 minutes trying to 100% clear just one level in, like, World 3, I decided, no thanks. I'm not going to 100% clear this game, and I just ended up playing through the rest of Yoshi's Island just as normal. And that's still a good game, still top 3 Super Nintendo games of all time for me. Just all the visuals are incredible, it's such a creative game. People who don't love Yoshi's Island, or at least don't like Yoshi's Island, are monsters, in my opinion. Like, oh my gosh, what kind of, like, fun-hating creature of darkness are you that you don't like Yoshi's Island? Like, you played through Super Mario Brothers twice. Like, I didn't even realize that I'd played through it twice. I played through, both times it was the Super Mario All-Stars version, because that got added to the Switch Online app. And it was the sort of thing where I think the day they came out on the Switch Online app, I played Super Mario Bros. 1 in the All-Stars version. I finished it. And then like 3 months later, I was just in the mood for something. And I ended up starting up Super Mario Bros. Again. And like halfway through, like replaying it, I was like, wait a minute. didn't I just do this like 3 months ago? And I ended up just going through and finishing the game a second time. Because, it's Super Mario Brothers. It's one of the cornerstones of all gaming history, basically. It didn't invent the side-scrolling platformer, but it may as well have. And for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, it holds up pretty darn well, Both times that I played through it, I didn't even use warp zones. I played through the entire game, world 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all in order, and had a good time. Especially in the All-Stars version, which does add just a couple of, quality of life improvements. There are these levels, I think they're called, maze levels or something, where you have to take a specific route through the castle in order to get to the end. Otherwise, it's kind of like this Lost Woods scenario where if you take the wrong path, you kind of just end up in this endless loop. When you do those maze levels in the All-Stars version of Super Mario Brothers, when you pick the correct path, you get a little ding-dong to let you know that you did it correctly. Otherwise, if you're playing just the original NES version, it's completely silent. You don't know that you've taken a wrong path until you loop back around and you're just back where you started. So that was good. Played through Panel de Pawn, aka Tetris Attack. For whatever reason, Nintendo did not release Tetris Attack on the Switch Online app, probably because they didn't want to deal with the Tetris license, because it is called Tetris Attack. So they put up Panel de Pawn on the Japanese Switch Online app, and that's still a pretty fun game, I think that was the very first time that I've ever actually finished the single-player campaign, and if you don't know, the regional differences between Tetris Attack and Panel de Pawn, Tetris Attack stars Yoshi, and you're fighting against Bowser and Bowser's minions, so, it's sort of almost like a versus puzzle game, but if you play it in single player, it's a little bit different. It's more like you get a set of worlds that are themed after a specific villain, and by clearing all the puzzles in that world, you defeat the villain. And, that's where you fight Lakitu and the frog from Yoshi's Island and, like I said, Bowser, and Kamek, all the warriors, as it were. In the original Panel de Pawn, it did not involve Yoshi at all. It was an original cast of fairies. If you know, from Smash Brothers, there's an item called Lip's Stick. One of the fairies' name is Lip, and she attacks with this magic wand that looks like a flower, and she comes from Panel de Pawn. It's still just Tetris Attack for the most part. A lot of the same music, a lot of the same puzzles, a lot of the same structure. Just now it's all about these fairies. I think they're fighting against a demon king or something. It's this guy in this big hulking armor. And it's just Tetris Attack. I love me some Tetris Attack, and Panel de Pawn and Tetris Attack are good games. I played through Hot Shot Racing last year. I'll tell you right now that I started writing a Hot Shot Racing review just a couple weeks ago, because I realized I've probably played enough of that I can form what I would consider to be an intelligent opinion on Hot Shot Racing. Which is that Hot Shot Racing is okay, but it's not a great game. It falls into what I would consider the flat out category, right? Where it's good enough that I enjoy playing it, but I don't love it. It mainly has problems with artificial intelligence and rubber banding. Vehicle physics can feel a little squirrely sometimes. It's fine for what it is, but it does feel sort of like it's writing on its retro aesthetic gimmick, let's say. I'm not going to really talk that much more deeply about it now, just in case I ever actually get that review finished and posted on bltn.net. But just rest assured, Hot Shot Racing, good but not great. I like it, I don't love it. Following that up would be Forza Horizon 3. Which is a very good racing game. But it was a little hard to transition to after playing so much Forza Horizon 4 when I had that demo of Game Pass. Forza Horizon 3, still a good game though. It's still more Forza Horizon. Those are probably some of my favorite simulation racing games on the market right now. I like it better than Forza Motorsport. I like it better than Gran Turismo. Oh, excuse me. I like it better than, Grid, Autosport, Dirt Rally, all those supposedly simulation games, Project Cars. Forza Horizon is better than all of them, and you can kind of just take your pick, right? I loved Forza Horizon 1. It was kind of not so hot on Forza Horizon 2. Didn't really like the Paris setting. Forza Horizon 3 takes place in, I believe, Australia. Has a lot better personality. It's a lot more fun. The environments are very varied because you have, mountains and jungles and beaches. And I even started one of the expansions recently, Blizzard Mountain. Oh, and I realize, saying this now, I made a big deal about how they charged money for Blizzard Mountain. I said I wasn't going to buy it. Spoilers, I totally bought it. I couldn't bear the thought, because if you didn't know, you can't actually buy Forza Horizon 3 anymore, or at least you can't buy brand new copies. The licenses for some of the cars and some of the music ran out, so it actually got taken off the marketplace. You can still find used console versions out there if you own an Xbox. You can still play the game, the servers are still up, everything like that. But as far as buying the DLC, buying the base game itself, Microsoft doesn't sell it anymore. However else you find it is up to you. And they'd priced the DLC weirdly. When they announced that it was being taken off the market, they dropped the price of everything. I think buying Forza Horizon 3 itself was down to $10 or $15, from 30, 40, 50, 60 that it kind of stayed at for the entire duration of its life cycle. And I thought it was weird that they had discounted the game so much, but not discounted the DLC. There were two main DLC packs for Forza Horizon 3. One added very wacky over the top Hot Wheels tracks that kind of turned it more into something that looked more like Trackmania. And then they'd added Blizzard Mountain, which added a whole new separate area where winter had come to Australia, and you drove through, this snowy map. And the whole thing about Blizzard Mountain is that, these blizzards can roll in, the weather is kind of dynamic, there's ice, the roads are a little bit more slippery, things like that. You have to worry about equipping snow tires on your car. But like I said, they'd priced the DLC strangely, where this Hot Wheels expansion and this Blizzard Mountain expansion seemed to still be full price, which wasn't a huge deal because I think Hot Wheels and Blizzard Mountain were $15 each. So, for $25, you could get the base game and one DLC pack, which was actually, pretty reasonable. So that's what I did. I bought the base game and I bought the Hot Wheels expansion, not realizing what they had actually done. The Microsoft storefront on the Windows 10 Store application had actually hidden from me the season pass for Forza Horizon 3, which included everything. It included Blizzard Mountain. It included the Hot Wheels track pack. It included 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 different car packs that they had released over the course of Forza Horizon 3's life cycle. And the season pass was only $10. So in theory, you could have actually gotten the complete Forza Horizon experience for $20 instead of, 30 or 40 or 50 or however much it cost to buy everything separately. So they discounted the season pass, but not the separate DLCs. And it didn't show me the season pass until after I'd already bought the Hot Wheels pack. And I was very upset about that. And I tried to get a refund. Microsoft denied me my refund because by their metric, I'd already put in, 40 hours into Forza Horizon 3. And they said, well, you can't get a refund if you've played this game for 40 hours. And I tried to explain to them that I hadn't touched the DLC yet, that I just wanted a refund on the DLC, and they weren't having it. They didn't want to hear me. So, I figured, screw them. I'm not going to buy the Blizzard Mountain DLC. And then some weeks passed, and it got closer and closer to the deadline where they were going to take all this stuff off the market forever. And I got to thinking about it, and I thought, man, if I just spent another $10 and bought the season pass, even though I already have the Lego Track Pack, I'd just have everything, and I wouldn't have to worry about missing out on something forever. So I just swallowed my pride, and I bought Blizzard Mountain. And Blizzard Mountain's pretty fun, as it turns out. Like I said, the blizzards, they're serious. Visibility gets real low. And even though it takes place in Australia, speaking as a boy who grew up in Colorado and really misses having heavy, constant snowfall every winter, the idea of just being able to load in to this Blizzard Mountain DLC and just have snow and have all the positives and negatives of snow is really nice. And I have not yet started the Hot Wheels track pack just yet. I really want to get around to it. Like, that is the number one thing that I wanted to play for Forza Horizon 3. And I never got around to it. I'm kind of saving it for a rainy day, which, any day can be a rainy day if you want it to be. Like, that's the long and the short of it. I played through a bunch of Sega Ages games last year. I finished Sega Ages G-Lock Air Battle, Sega Ages Shinobi, and Sega Ages Puyo Puyo 2. Those were okay games, but like I was saying, when TSSE shut down, like, I was starting to get kind of tired of the Sega Ages games. Because for a really long time now, all they've been doing is picking like these very weird, obscure games that I don't think anyone really cares that much about. Certainly not like they would, say, Ristar or Gunstar Heroes, or I'm trying to think of other they've ooh boy, got stuck into something there. They've re-released Sega Genesis games so many times that, like, at this point, if they were going to keep doing Sega Ages games, they should have moved on to like the Sega Saturn, right? We should have gotten like Shining Force 3, Nights into Dreams, Virtua Fighter 2, Virtua Fighter 1, Daytona USA, Sonic the Fighters, Outrun 2006, Ferrari F355 Challenge, Planet Harriers, get into the obscure stuff that hasn't been such a focus for the last 20 years. Get into the real obscure stuff, the modern obscure stuff that people might not necessarily know about. Stop just redoing, like, for example, Puyo Puyo 2, right? They did Sega Ages Puyo Puyo 2, which re-released the arcade version of Puyo Puyo 2. And I really like that version of the game. That was a really good Sega Ages port. Probably like one of the last good Sega Ages ports. But also, like, Puyo 2 has been available on the Switch the Super Nintendo Online app for like over a year now. People had access to Puyo 2. They did not necessarily need the arcade version. Now there are two separate versions of that game on the Switch. And why did they have to do that? That feels like a waste of resources when they could have chosen a much better, much more appealing game to go for. Like, they could have done, imagine a version of House of the Dead on the Switch, where instead of a light gun, you use the touch screen to tap on zombies. That would be pretty cool, right? Why didn't they do a Sega Ages House of the Dead like that? Like, I would really like to have that. Why didn't they do Sega Ages Sega Rally? Virtua On, Fighting Vipers, Virtua Fighter Kids. There are so many, like, games beyond the Genesis and early arcade games that they could have adapted and they didn't. Especially, like, the worst offender to me was G-Lock Air Battle, because that was just a worse version of Afterburner, because they'd already done a version of Afterburner on the Switch already. And they'd already done a version of Afterburner on the 3DS. So they didn't have any more Afterburner left to do, so they went for this weird pseudo-sequel / spin-off that's more realistic and more boring. And to me, that's what led to the end of the Sega Ages line, is that they just started picking these weird, obscure games that nobody liked. And that sucks. Like, that's my opinion on all of this, is that sucks. I liked Sega Ages Puyo 2. I thought Sega Ages Shinobi was way better than I was expecting. But they just started picking these weird games that I don't think very many people cared about. I also finished last year Uncharted 2, which was way better than Uncharted 1, but also really started to drag its feet the closer you got to the end of that video game. And, you know, this hit right around the time where a lot of disdain for Naughty Dog games was really starting to ramp up, because they were just making these very cinematic experiences that ripped off popular Hollywood movies, and some people were starting to get sick of that. And I couldn't shake the feeling that, you know, Uncharted 2 was okay, but it was not great. It was very much a product of its time. And, you know, I had big plans of playing Uncharted 1, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and then getting to The Last of Us. But finally finishing Uncharted 2 and thinking about staring down the barrel of Uncharted 3, the game people hate, Uncharted, the Uncharted game that most people hate the most, just really did not grab my fancy. And I also now own Uncharted 4. I could move on to that as well. Again, people praise Uncharted 4 quite a lot, but I don't know what capacity exists in my heart to be excited for a Naughty Dog cinematic experience right now. I'm not saying that I'm swearing them off forever. I'm not saying that that's going to be the worst thing. Like, they aren't bad games. They just are what they are. And I think I've had my fill on them for now. You know, I don't necessarily think I need to move on to Uncharted 3. I don't know that I need to move on to Uncharted 4. I don't know that I need to play The Last of Us Remastered on the PS4 at this point in time. You know, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 2 years, 5 years from now, maybe my opinion will change. You know, I'm not closing my heart off to this forever, but for right now, I think I'm done. I played Chex Quest HD, which it's been this really long history. This guy's been trying to make a new Chex Quest thing, right? I think it started out as a fan game called, like, Vioflem or something. It was supposed to be like this remaster effort for Chex Quest, and, you know, he was making it in, like, the Doom 3 engine or something crazy. And I think the cereal company picked him up officially and gave him a small budget, and they kind of remastered the first episode of Chex Quest for free, and it's out there on Steam. And that was okay. You know, its controls are a little mushy, the visuals are a little whatever, but for a low-budget, freely released thing that you don't have to pay for on Steam, it was good enough. The original Doom version of Chex Quest probably plays a little bit better, but as far as Chex Quest HD goes, it's okay. You know, I'm not going to say that it's bad. I enjoyed it enough that, you know, if you want to go out there and you want to play Chex Quest HD on Steam, you go right ahead. It's fine. Put that on the back of the non-existent box. It's fine. Trademark Ryan Bloom, patreon.com/PlaysHedgehog. And then finally here on the list of games I finished last year was the HD remake / remaster of the original Ratchet and Clank that was made to coincide with this full-length cinematic theatrical Ratchet and Clank movie. And that was okay. Again, this is a game that I liked but did not love. I know that there are a lot of Ratchet and Clank fans out there that are really upset with this game, because it kind of steps all over the history of that franchise, and it's not as funny, and it's, it kind of messes with all these character beats, but it plays fine. It plays okay, and, it was good enough that I actually played all the way through the game and I finished it. I did not love it. I do think that in some regards, at the very least, that PS2 version of the original Ratchet and Clank is probably a little bit better. It's definitely a little bit funnier. But the remake / remaster is fine. It looks pretty. The story is kind of whatever. Again, they were sort of like shackled to this awful movie that that is what it is. You can't really help that. But as far as how it plays, it's still it's a good enough Ratchet and Clank game. It's just probably not one of the best games in the series. That's the long and short of it. Like I said, it is what it is. That was the games I finished last year. We could just bounce through, because I have other categories in this list. Still replaying and unfinished in general. Under still replaying, we have Bayonetta, Sonic Adventure, Halo 3, which I still need to get back to after all this time. I remember that being like a really nice experience after finishing Halo 2 Anniversary. Halo 3 felt so much faster and so much better, and just, I think I said this at the time, it just felt like an apology game for Halo 2. Still replaying Left 4 Dead 2, Sonic Lost World, Sonic Forces, Donkey Kong Country 3. I think since writing this list, I have finished Donkey Kong Country 3 with, I think it was like 80% completion, 70% completion. Took me just under 3 or 4 hours. Donkey Kong Country 3, not one of the best Donkey Kong Country games ever made. It's still fine. I mean, it's still playable. Again, it's a game that I would probably say I like but don't love. But it like the overwhelming feeling you get while you're playing Donkey Kong Country 3 is that the people at Rare who are making it feel like they regret having to make it. Like, by then the N64 had been out for like a whole year, maybe 2. And it just really feels like, like they don't have the time or the energy to keep working on a Super Nintendo game. There just isn't enough polish. It doesn't, like, the ideas aren't as sound. It's plenty creative, but it's a very weirdly messy game. I mean, it's okay. I just don't love it. Still replaying Jurassic Park on the Super Nintendo. I did not finish it when I put together that video review. I think I played, 4 or 5 hours of it to capture footage, and then after I'd captured my footage, I never went back and actually finished the game. I think I was probably on the last objective and probably had like 4 or 5 more eggs to collect. I think the very last objective you have to do is figure out a way to stop the velociraptors from getting on the ship and leaving the island. And I think if I wasn't there yet, I was close. I think you also have to like go into the raptor den and sort of gas their egg collection or something weird like that. Still replaying Mario Kart 8. I think I will never stop replaying Mario Kart 8. That's a heck of a game. Replayed a little bit of Halloween Forever. I put Sonic Mania on this list, but I don't remember actually replaying Sonic Mania last year. I know I've kind of been getting the itch every now and then to think about replaying Sonic Mania, and I never boot it up. Usually I think, oh boy, I feel like replaying Sonic Mania, and then I think about the boss fights and how much they drag that experience down. Like, at this point, I think the boss fights are like the number one thing that I don't like about Sonic Mania after all these years. Like, I can sort of tolerate how big and overcomplicated the level designs are, but then you tack a boss fight at the end of them, and there's just so much like waiting around, and there's so much like fiddly little things that are hard to do. The boss fights are like the number one biggest bummer about Sonic Mania. Still replaying Sonic R, still replaying Sonic Project 2006. That's the fan game that remakes Sonic 2006, except that it actually like improves the controls and it makes it feel really nice to play and everything else. Still replaying Petite Hedgehog, which is a fan game from 2016 by Chengy Nerd, I believe. At some point, he rebooted Petite Hedgehog and was going for a completely different art style and a completely different feel. But as far as I'm concerned, like that 2016 version of Petite Hedgehog, it looks and it sounds and it plays really good. It's like this, sort of like this Sonic Advance tribute, right? But, you know, all original graphics, all original music. Nothing was ripped from any official Genesis games or Game Boy Advance games or anything like that. It is a totally original Sonic game, and it looked and it played great. And, you know, hearing that he was going to reboot it and do this new art style and everything like this, everything else, just, it kind of bummed me out a little bit. Hopefully Chengy Nerd is a he. I guess I don't know. Still replaying Sonic Generations. Again, that's a game like Mario Kart 8. That's a game like Left 4 Dead 2 and the Sonic Adventure, where I will probably always be replaying Sonic Generations in some form. You know, it's one of those games that will probably be always permanently installed on every computer that I ever have for the rest of my life. I started replaying the PS2 version of Ratchet and Clank, mainly just to compare to the PS4 remaster a little bit. And, you know, the PS2 version of Ratchet and Clank hasn't aged that well, but it also has, you know, it's still fine. It's still fun. It's just the player models look a little weird every now and then. Still replaying Road Trip Adventure. I don't know why that's under replaying. That's something I started for the first time this year that I just never finished. That's like a very simple, very cute racing game for the PS2. Open world. It has like a surprisingly large world map. It's good. It's a nice game to chill out with. You know, it's not like a super exciting sort of thing. In Japan, it's known as Koro Q, or sometimes in America it was known as Penny Racers. It's about like these really like super deformed, cutesy like baby cars that drive around. And, you know, again, it's just very chill, very nice. It's what is called a car RPG, which is an RPG with cars in it. The whole campaign mode is driving around this giant world map, like this open world, and recruiting other cars into your racing team because you want to become president of Road Trip Adventure. It's nice. It's cute. Still replaying Rayman 2. I went back to that and did like 4 or 5 levels in an old save file in like a Dreamcast emulator. Rayman 2 is still good, still my favorite Rayman game. And then once again, in the same category as Sonic Adventure, Left 4 Dead 2, Sonic Generations, etc., still replaying Distance on the PC, which is a survival racing game, as it were. If you remember, Nitronic Rush was an indie game way back in the day. This is kind of the spiritual successor to that. It's a driving game where you have a jump button, and it's sort of like almost like this Super Meat Boy kind of thing, where you have to survive these insanely difficult tracks by like avoiding spike pits and doing all like these midair stunts, and you get like glider wings like Rush 2049. There's like Distance is super, super duper fun. I've talked about this before. There's like a huge workshop community out there on the Steam Workshop that is just generating, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like really good, really fun user-made tracks. That game, Distance, is one of those games that will probably last me forever. You know, I have like 300 tracks subscribed to on Distance in the Steam Workshop, and I haven't even played half of them. Heck of a game, just absolutely incredible. Probably up there, you know, top 5 racing games of all time. Distance is amazing. And then for the final category, we have just, you know, games I haven't finished in general. These aren't games that I finished. These aren't games that I'm replaying. These are just games, brand new games that I started last year, but just did not get around to seeing the ending of. And again, we'll just run through these super quick because this is like the biggest category on this entire list. Super Hot was pretty good. I don't know why I didn't go back to it. I just, it's just one of those games where you play for like a day or two and then you kind of get distracted from it long enough that you just kind of think, well, I don't know what's going on. I don't remember how to play it. And you just kind of blow it off. 100% Orange Juice, which is a very nice like anime board game, sort of not quite like Mario Kart, but not quite like Fortune Street. It's sort of just like this board game where you go around like almost like a Monopoly map or something like that, and you have to fight like random RPG battles, and I think you capture different spaces on the board. I haven't played it in a while. Used to be a game that I'd play a lot with my friends, but it was real fun, and it's one of those games that I've marked on here on this list as like potentially being unfinishable. I think there is like a campaign mode with like a proper actual story that you play by yourself, but it's a board game. You kind of want to play that with your friends. You don't want to play through some story mode all by yourself. Toe Jam and Earl, Back in the Groove. I played a little bit of that. I think I've talked about it on a past podcast. That's all right, but it's not like super different from the Sega Genesis game. It's maybe a little bit more faster paced, and obviously it has nicer visuals. But I also think about there's a guy that works for that game now, who is kind of a known sexual predator, and that kind of makes me look at Back in the Groove and kind of be like, ooh, I don't know if I want to keep playing that, especially when it's not like that super different from the original Sega Genesis game. I could just play the original 1992 version of Toe Jam and Earl and be fine with that. I don't have to. But again, like, it's the sort of thing where I didn't even buy Back in the Groove for myself. It was a gift from a Twitter follower. I think he might even be a patron, who just had an extra key lying around, and he said, do you want it? And I said, okay, sure. So, it's not like I'm giving them money. It's not like I'm promoting their sexual predator fund or whatever you want to call it. It's just a video game, and it's fine. It's okay. Teabat is a original indie game that's showed up at Sage for a couple years now. It's a very, very simple Game Boy style platformer. That's kind of basically all you can say about it, is that it's just nice. It's not like amazing or incredible. It's not like super original. It's kind of repetitive, if I'm being super honest. But also, it's a work in progress. The developer is still going through adding new levels, tweaking different things, adding new enemies. So it is what it is. Fortnite Battle Royale also marked unfinishable. Fortnite Save the World, which is the campaign mode. I will spare talking about this for too long because there was a podcast 2 or 3 podcasts ago where I spent like an hour deconstructing how this Save the World game works. It's basically just a very complex mobile game where everything can level up, everything has perks, everything is equipable. It's a big, overcomplicated nightmare, and I don't recommend playing it. Even though I'm having fun with it. The mission dialogue is very fun. I'm entering the final chapter of that game. I'm just about done with the story. I think there are 19 missions in Save the World for the final chapter, and me and my friend, we just finished like mission 7 of 19 last night. That is coming up on the halfway point of the final chapter of the game. And once that's done, we fight the final boss, and then we're done with Save the World. And it just becomes Fortnite Battle Royale again. I mean, there are, obviously, it's a mobile games kind of thing. They do introduce new story missions every now and then. It's not going to be like after we beat the final boss, we're just going to be permanently done with Save the World forever. But it does mean that it's going to be less of a thing that I think about. It's going to be less of a thing that I play very much. It's not going to be, it's going to be a weird time. Because I actually did like a PlayStation stat thing just a few weeks ago. Like, here's here's what you did on PlayStation in 2020. And it was like, you played 875 hours of Fortnite. And it was like, what? 875 hours of Fortnite in 1 year? The comparison I made to that at the time was that with Left 4 Dead 2, I played that game every weeknight with my friends for like 4 or 5 or 6 years. Every single night we played it. And doing that, I played Left 4 Dead 2 for about 930 hours. And I played almost as much Fortnite last year, just last year alone, as I did, we'll say, 4 years of playing Left 4 Dead 2 every night. That's wild. There's going to be such a weird feeling when I don't have to play that much Fortnite anymore. And I say that like it's a job, like it's going to be this thing where like I don't want to play Fortnite anymore. I do, you know, it's a fun video game. But it's going to be weird, man. It's going to be weird not thinking about what the next mission in the Save the World campaign mode is going to be like. Whew. Still haven't finished Spelunky after all these years. I think I've seen Olmec like twice in my entire life, and I've never beaten him. And with everyone else, you know, talking and buzzing about Spelunky 2 this year, and how maybe it's kind of a letdown, I've been going back to Spelunky 1 every now and then and thinking, okay, if I'm ever going to buy Spelunky 2 and check it out for myself, I should probably finish Spelunky 1 first. And for about 2 weeks, you know, I was playing Spelunky 1 every night and making these decisions on, you know, oh, do I take this item? Do I do this? Do I do that? And then I kind of fell off of it again, you know, so maybe I don't necessarily need Spelunky 2. I will say that when Spelunky 1 comes out on the Switch, I think it's either later this year or early next year, I'm buying that as soon as possible. Still haven't finished this game called Iggy's Egg Adventure, which is about a little velociraptor or Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's very cute. It's very much like a Super Nintendo platformer back in the day. Like, you remember, we had like this weird stint of like caveman games for a while, right? You know, we had Prehistoric Man, we had Joe and Mac Caveman Ninja, we had Chuck Rock, we had Radical Rex, we had all the Flintstones games. You know, there was kind of this weird like prehistoric, almost like dinosaur fever for a while. And that's kind of what Iggy's Egg Adventure... I need to slow down talking. That's kind of what Iggy's Egg Adventure feels like. It feels like a game like torn from that chapter in history. But it's also like, it's, you know, it's like cutesy baby dinosaurs. But then there's also like this weird thing, I've talked about this before, where when you attack enemies, they explode into like all this gore and blood. Like, you're supposed to be killing and eating them. It's very bizarre in a way that I really like genuinely like. You know, it's just the kind of weird that I enjoy. Still haven't finished Spark the Electric Jester, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I care about finishing Spark the Electric Jester. That game is okay. I know a lot of people love it, but I've always had problems with the games that Lake Feppard makes, and I don't think that Spark the Electric Jester is good enough for me to put up with it, especially considering knowing the history of that game, right? Where, you know, he tries to write these like super serious, super mature storylines that are actually just a little more embarrassing than anything else. And he actually kind of threw a temper tantrum with Spark the Electric Jester, where for an April Fool's joke one year, he patched the game to have this sort of like really fake, really stupid, really like, you know, self-deprecating storyline. He just went through and he replaced the original storyline with this crummy new version that kind of makes fun of itself, and he never fixed it. And, you know, he released Spark the Electric Jester 2, which references events from that original Spark the Electric Jester storyline that doesn't exist anymore. And that sucks. That's stupid. Like, oh my gosh. Like, we're not going to get into it here. Or probably ever, but he's done things with this franchise and in general that I do not agree with. So I don't have any plans to finish Spark the Electric Jester. I had a brief stint of playing Downwell for a little while. I even bought it on the Switch for like $2. Still haven't finished that. It's probably going to fall into the same category as Spelunky, where I don't think I'll ever finish it, because that's kind of why those games exist. At least for me, you know, it's just kind of something where I will probably never get good enough to finish those games. And, you know, that's okay. Like, if that's what you're looking for, you know, who cares? I don't think I necessarily want to finish Spelunky or Downwell. They're almost like arcade games in a sense, where they're meant to be replayed more than they are meant to be finished. It was actually funny, there was a tweet going around, though, not that long ago, from the creator of Downwell, who was like, oh, I picked up Downwell again recently. I haven't played it since I finished making the game, and you know what? This game is way too hard. Which is pretty funny, you know? I think about how much I play Downwell, and I never usually make it past even the second world. There was one run where I think I made it to the end of the third or maybe the start of the fourth world, and that's as far as I've ever gone. Haven't finished Doom 64 yet, or I don't know if I actually have yet or not. I know I've played Doom 64 since writing this article, or since writing this list, and I think I might have finished it since then. I'd have to double check. I own it on the Switch. But I've played it pretty far. I'm probably going to finish it this year if I haven't already. That's an alright Doom game, you know, that's very enjoyable. I don't think it's as good as Doom 1 or even Doom 2, but it is kind of going for a different vibe. It's not quite as, you know, high energy as Doom 1 and 2 can be, and I think that's kind of on purpose. I think they were kind of trying to develop a Doom game specifically for the console, and kind of were trying to keep the limitations of the N64 controller in mind. So it is a little bit more thoughtful. There's a little bit more puzzle solving. It's a little bit more, it's got that more of a horror edge. It's more of a scary game than it is, you know, big strong action man blows up the monsters. Which is good, you know. I'm not gonna knock it. It may not be as like world-changing, amazing as Doom 1 was, but it doesn't have to be. You know, it's still a good game. Pac-Man 256, again, I think I got that on PC recently. Was playing through a little bit of it. That's a mobile game. I'm not sure that you can finish it. I think I got Carol Blaster last year for Christmas, I'll say. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I probably played about halfway through that, haven't finished it yet. It's just one of those games where I started it and I kind of fell off of playing it for a little while, like Super Hot, right? Where it's been so long since I've played it, it's kind of hard to get back into. I started and came very close to finishing Crash Bandicoot 2 in the Insane trilogy, but I think I have one level left to go, and it is such a difficult, unfair, mean level that I think I've actually uninstalled the Insane trilogy since then. It was just the sort of level where I've thrown myself at it like 2 or 3 times now, where, you know, I'll play it for like, I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just this one level. Just over and over and over and over again, like getting game overs and having to restart and all this other stuff. And then I'll quit it for like, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a couple months. And then I'll go back and try and finish just that one level again, spend like another 30 or 45 minutes not being able to clear it, put it down for, you know, weeks or months, go back to it, throw myself at it again, and can't beat it. And, you know, I've talked about before, Naughty Dog likes hard games, especially Naughty Dog of this era, of Crash Bandicoot 1 and Crash Bandicoot 2. And I finished the original Crash, but there's just this one level at the very end of Crash Bandicoot 2 that I think brought me to my limit. And I decided, you know what? I played through 99% of Crash Bandicoot 2. I think I'm good, and I uninstalled the Insane trilogy. Played through Sonic Robo-Blast 2, never finished it because, once again, you kind of get to the end of that game and you get to the Egg Rock Zone, the final zone of the game, and it's a zone that they haven't really refurbished or enhanced or improved in like 8 years. It is probably the most untouched, unbalanced level still in SRB2. And it gets to be a very mean level. And it's sort of like that last level of Crash Bandicoot 2, where you throw yourself at it and you throw yourself at it. You get mad, you quit for a while, you cool off, you come back, and you still can't beat it. And the main thing about Sonic Robo-Blast 2 is that the development team has said one of the very next things on the docket is redesigning and improving Egg Rock Zone. So it's kind of like this thing, like, why am I letting myself get frustrated at this level that's not even going to be like this in the future? It's going to be a completely different level at some point in the future. They're going to fix this. They're going to change it. So why should I bother fighting through it now as it is? And I quit. I will wait until the next major revision of SRB2 before I actually make an attempt at beating the game, like a serious attempt. I think I got Bubsy the Woolly Strike Back either for my birthday or for Christmas. That's kind of a hard game to play. The PC port is kind of buggy. It likes to crash a lot, especially if you don't know how to work with it. And it's just one of those things, again, Super Hot, Doom 64, games like that, Caro Blaster, where it's been long enough where it's just hard to go back to. It's hard to get back into that mindset. And there's that added hurdle of having to know the special way to launch the PC port so that it doesn't crash on boot. That was an okay game. I'm not going to pretend that it was outstanding or amazing or anything like that, but it was probably the best Bubsy game I've ever played, for better or worse. And I'm going to mostly say for worse, because it didn't really have the kind of personality I wanted out of a Bubsy game. It was too self-referential. It was too self-deprecating. It was just it was fine, but it was not an amazing game. Did not finish Lloyd the Monkey 2. Did not finish Golf with Your Friends. Gosh, where did I get Golf with Your Friends? I think that might have been like a Humble Choice bundle, and I played through like the first 4 or 8 or 16 holes, and like the difficulty just spiked through the roof, and I was like, nope, I'm done. Did not finish Rocket League. Again, I think that's a game that can't be finished. Did not finish Sonic GT, which is a fan game that I really like. I think I got up to the final level, and, it was, once again, one of these games. It's been long enough where it's hard to dive back into that after being away from it for so long. I do remember the final level, maybe even I was stuck on the final boss even, just being incredibly difficult, or just difficult enough that I figured, I'll stop here for the night. And then I just kind of never went back to it. Still haven't finished Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Still haven't finished Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. That's like Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is a game that when I'm in the middle of playing it, I am having a lot of fun. But when I'm away from that game, I never feel like playing it. It's one of those games where I kind of have to force myself to launch it in order to, get into that mindset and have fun. It's a very weird thing. I'm having fun when I actually get around to playing it, but I just never feel like getting around to playing it. It's very strange. Still haven't finished Heavy Bullets. We'll put that in the same category as Downwell and Spelunky. It's kind of like a roguelite. But this time Heavy Bullets is like a first-person shooter. Around the same time that I was getting like super into Spelunky again because of Spelunky 2, I got way into playing Heavy Bullets again, and I probably got the furthest in Heavy Bullets that I've ever gotten. I actually beat the very first boss in that game, and I think there's 2 bosses total. which, you know, it's a very difficult boss. It's very difficult just to reach. And I was getting good enough at the game to the point where I could reach it, you know, 7 times out of 10 attempts. And eventually I just learned the strategy on how to beat it. But you know, with like Spelunky and with Downwell, eventually I kind of reached my fill for that kind of roguelite, and I put it away for a little while. And we're kind of in that part of my life where I've put away heavy bullets, for a while. Have not finished a Medieval. I got that game for Christmas, actually. A patron sent it to me. Really, like, tremendously fun game. I really, really like it. It's kind of in that new age retro shooter mold, like Dusk and Proteus and everything else. But this one is kind of medieval styled. It's a little bit Dark Souls, but it's very colorful. It's very, you know, energetic. You move very fast. It kind of, some people say it reminds them of like Heretic or Hexen, but it's not quite like that. That's kind of an insult to both a medieval and to Heretic and Hexen. It's a very interesting game. It's a very fun game. I really do like it. But the final boss of a medieval cranks things just a little too high. To give you an example of what the final boss of a medieval is, they give you an invincibility power-up when you drop into the boss arena, as if they're trying to say, good luck, you're going to need it. And, you know, every other boss in a medieval was like trivially easy. And the final boss of a medieval goes in kind of the opposite direction, where it's just like constant, insane bullet spam that's impossible to avoid. And I think it has like 2 or 3 different forms. Like it's ridiculous. I don't know if I'm ever going to go back to that. Have not finished Ghostbusters, the video game remastered. I think I'm near the end of that game. Got to some kind of big slime castle or something, and I just haven't gone back to it. Have not finished Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in the context of this trying to be like a Game of the Year list, if I was to pick a Game of the Year, my favorite game from 2020, surprisingly, it would probably be Final Fantasy VII Remake, if we're being honest. I have a review forthcoming for that I was writing for TSSC News, and then I kind of got fired. Everyone got fired from TSSC News because the site shut down, and it kind of just threw a monkey wrench into my whole interest in playing Final Fantasy VII Remake. But in the months since then, Chip and Ironicus, you know, famous old school Let's Players from the Something Awful days, have started a Let's Play of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and watching them go through the game has kind of been rekindling my interest, rekindling my thoughts about the game. And they've almost played up to the point where I left off. So it's kind of getting to the point where they're going to start seeing stuff in the game that I myself haven't seen yet, and I don't want spoilers. So I've been very much like, even like the last couple weeks, thinking I need to get back and play more Final Fantasy VII Remake. I need to advance the story so that they don't catch up to me, so that I don't start getting spoilers or start having to ignore new episodes that they're putting out. Because their Let's Play is actually like really good. They have become probably my favorite team of Let's Players on the internet. Their videos are like insanely informative. They're very well edited. They have great chemistry. They have really great senses of humor. They are definitely like the best Let's Players on the internet, period. And their Final Fantasy VII Remake Let's Play is excellent. They've also done like excellent Metal Gear Let's Plays. They've done, you know, really obscure, weird indie games. They did an absolutely fantastic Duck Dynasty Let's Play of an Xbox 360 game based on the old reality TV show. They first got prominence for doing Let's Plays of all these really old, really weird M. Dickey games, if you know who that is. Chip and Ironicus are a class act. And if you aren't watching their Let's Plays, maybe consider checking them out. Have not finished Final Fantasy Theatrhythm Curtain Call, which is a rhythm game. That's another game I got from Christmas from a fellow patron, from a fellow friend that has been friends with me for a very long time. That's a really, really good game. It's a very relaxing game. It's so weird to think about for how much I haven't cared about Final Fantasy in so long, because of the direction it went from, like the direction the series went through after Final Fantasy, we'll say 8, right? Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 10, Final Fantasy 13, 14, I'm not a fan of the more recent Final Fantasies. And to just go through Theatrhythm and hear all the old Final Fantasy music, and just, it takes me back to a simpler time. I play Theatrhythm and I can physically feel like my blood pressure lowering. It is incredible. It's a very enjoyable game. And I'm very particular about my rhythm games in general. I have a copy of Guitar Hero 3 that I bought from a thrift store 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I've never played it. It's sitting here basically new in box, and I've never taken it out of its box. I remember borrowing my cousin's copy of Guitar Hero 2 for the Xbox 360 and playing like 2 songs on that thing, and then, 2 months later giving him the guitar and the game back because I just wasn't interested in it. I have a copy of Donkey Konga 2 for the GameCube that I just, it never connected with me. I have Guitaru Man for the PS2, the very legendary, very rare game. And, I never have beaten that either. I have very, specific tastes with rhythm games, and it's the kind of thing where even I don't know what I'm going to connect with. Really, when you think about it, the only rhythm game that I've ever really gotten good at was Parappa the Rapper, the original PS1 version of Parappa the Rapper. I don't even really like Lammy. I don't like Parappa 2. I definitely don't like the remaster of Parappa the Rapper on PS4. It's one of those things where I think about it and I think, oh, I love rhythm games. I love music. I do music production for myself. And then 95% of the rhythm games that I play, I bounce off of, I think the only other rhythm game besides Parappa that I really connected with was that very first Rhythm Heaven game on the Game Boy Advance. And even then I never really finished it because it kind of got a little too difficult and a little too demanding for me. But so far, Theatrhythm is pretty good. It also helps that it's a game that I come and I go at, right? I've since getting it for Christmas, I've only probably played it 4 or 5 times now. But whenever I do sit down and play it, I play 7 or 8 or 9 songs in a row. I go ham on it, and that seems to be working out pretty good for me. It's good to revisit that culture of. Because, my internet days, I grew up on the internet in 1998, 1999, 2002, 2004, those early days. And, at least in the cultures I was a part of, it was very much in the cult of worshiping the music of Nobuo Uematsu, right? His Final Fantasy soundtracks, and Yasunori Mitsuda, right? His Chrono Trigger soundtrack. Xenogears, games like that. And Theatrhythm, at least as far as I've played it, I've only really poked at Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, a little bit of 7. It feels very much of that era of the kind of Final Fantasy music that I grew up with, that I grew up loving, right? The Red Barons, the theme of that, the theme of, Locke's theme from Final Fantasy VI, Dancing Mad, all the battle themes, just all that stuff, It's very much, it's a very nostalgic game for me. Still haven't finished Dragon Quest Builders. That's a ridiculously long game. I think I've talked about this in years past. That game is broken up into chapters, and each chapter is basically long enough to be its own entire game, and there's something like 10 or 15 or 20 chapters in that game. And every time you finish one chapter, you get kind of like transported to a new map and have to start all over building a brand new town and everything. And I think I went back and I played Dragon Quest Builders just a few months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, and I think I'm finally at the final battle of Chapter 1. And I'm kind of putting that off a little bit. Still haven't finished Minecraft. I just played a little bit of that this year because it was, a Discord I'm in was kind of setting up a Minecraft community server, and I played maybe 2 or 3 hours of that one night. Still haven't finished Fast RMX. Still haven't finished Bug 2 on the Sega Saturn. Still haven't finished SteamWorld Dig 2 on the Switch. I'm on the final boss of that, and once again, it's one of these things where you get to the final boss and there's this big spike in difficulty, and I just haven't gotten around to buckling down, gritting my teeth, and getting it done. Haven't finished Tetris 99, which may or may not be an unfinishable game. I think I put it on here just because, not only just because I put like Fortnite on here, which is another game that you can't necessarily finish because it's multiplayer, but also because Tetris 99 does have like single player DLC. I just don't own the DLC. Haven't finished Wrecked on the Switch, which is kind of like an arena stunt racer where you're kind of driving around in this cute little low poly car and you're doing like these Tony Hawk objectives. I don't think I've finished. Well, again, that's another one of those games that might be unfinishable. I think it just gives you new objectives forever. Still haven't finished Asphalt 9 Legends on the Switch. That is probably the best racing game on the Switch right now, in my opinion. Next to Fast RMX and everything. It's just a mobile game, it does have like a single player campaign for you to work your way through, where you're doing stunt challenges and things like that. Because since I haven't talked about Asphalt 9 in a while, it's basically just like a Burnout clone for the Switch. But there's a stunt system and there's all these unlockable cars. And again, it's ported from the mobile space, so it's kind of like a mobile game where it's experience meters and it's all this leveling up and things like that. But like I said, it does have a single-player campaign. It's just, you kind of play mobile games and you get into this thing where you're just doing events constantly, basically. Where you're just, you boot the game up and it shows, hey, we've got a special event going on. And that just becomes the only thing you play is just the special event banners. And that's kind of what Asphalt 9 has become for me. It's sort of this thing where I've been ignoring the actual single-player campaign. I started and did not finish Crisis Warhead last year. I had a lot of friends bragging about that game, about how it was better than the original Crisis and all this other stuff, and I do not agree. It feels like a fan-made mod where it's just like, here's everything you did in the original Crisis, but compacted way down so that it's way faster and way less polished and just not as good. And, I probably played about 2-3 hours of Crisis Warhead, maybe less, and I said, this sucks, no more, and I uninstalled the game. Started and did not finish Earthworm Jim 3D last year. That's all I'm going to say about that. Did not finish Grip Combat Racing, did not finish Grid, did not finish Grid 2. Wait, did I say that right? Did not finish Grip Combat Racing, did not finish Receiver, and did not finish Grid 2. Grid 2 is a Codemasters racing game. It's kind of like the precursor to Grid Autosport. It's the sequel to the original Grid. I just kind of got bored with it. That's one of those racing games where I get the feeling Codemasters was trying to figure out how to level up their racing game, as it were. They were starting to put like these big complex story modes into their games. Not necessarily like you get with like a Need for Speed game, but just a lot of like chatty people talking to you about the magic of racing and things like that. And it was a little bit too much. It was one of those games where all I wanted to do was race, and all it wanted to do was talk to me about racing. And I put quite a bit of time into Grid 2, probably 15 hours at the very least. And I just kind of got bored with it, and I uninstalled it. And then last on this list, did not finish Gloomwood, Ultra Kill, or Graven, because those were all demos in a Steam demo event. I don't think I really need to talk about them too much more than that. Gloomwood is kind of like a thief-style immersive sim, where you're sneaking around doing stealth in like this, almost like this Bloodborne city. It's got a very retro aesthetic. It seemed cool, but I don't necessarily know if it's my kind of game. Ultra Kill is also another sort of retro first-person shooter. It's best explained as like Devil May Cry meets Quake 1, which is about as cool as it sounds. It's very colorful, it's very energetic, it's very cool. Out of all these three retro shooters, I would definitely recommend you check out Ultra Kill first. And then Graven is a 3D realm sort of, again, it's almost like Hexen or Heretic, where it's like this retro first-person shooter where you're going into like this medieval environment, and there's like this plague that you have to deal with, zombies and things like that. And it was okay. I think I talked about this one very recently, so I probably don't need to retread that ground too much. But I ended up getting lost in the demo and just kind of quitting and figuring, whatever. But that's it. That's your recap of everything I played in 2020. And that was another hour and a half. I could have very easily split this into 2 different podcasts. Oh well. Like I said, if you really want like what my pick for Game of the Year 2020 is, it would be Final Fantasy VII Remake. And if you want me to expand on that opinion any more than that, you're just going to have to wait for the review that I may or may not ever finish writing. But that's going to do it. It's going to do it for this podcast segment. Oh my gosh. I've been talking so much. Anyway, we're going to go to some music, and we're going to come back. We're going to come back with current media things I've been playing and watching recently. Stay tuned for that. Returned, and I hope you have too, which is a really weird way to come back from a break, but this is the final segment of the podcast where I usually go through, movies, TVs, video games, things like that I've been watching. And since this is easily going to be a 3-hour podcast, I know I say this a lot, but I'm going to try and get through this segment as quickly as possible. So over Christmas, I ended up watching Christmas movies, things like that. Like the very first thing that I saw was Die Hard. I know there's, a lot of discourse. People get sick of the discourse around Die Hard, whether or not it's a Christmas movie, whether, what it is, what it isn't, things like that. But the most important thing to me is that I'd never seen Die Hard before, ever, at all. I often joke with my friends that it would be easier for me to name the super popular movies that I have seen, like the all-time classics, than go through all the all-time classic movies that I haven't seen, because I haven't seen most of them. Just off the top of my head, I've never seen Alien. I've never seen all of Aliens, the sequel. I've never seen all of Jaws. I've never seen most of Alfred Hitchcock's collection of movies. I've seen a few here and there, like The Birds and Psycho and things like that. But, as far as like Rear Window and Vertigo and, all the other movies that he's done, I haven't seen them. I have not seen Citizen Kane. I've never seen The Godfather. I've never seen Goodfellas. Name a Martin Scorsese movie, and I've probably never seen it. Never seen, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I could keep going forever. Never seen Lethal Weapon. Never seen Rambo. Never seen Rocky. I only just saw Terminator 1. I mean, we could talk about that, maybe. I didn't actually write it down here in my notes, come to think of it. But we're not going to talk about the Terminator, because that was a movie I only half paid attention to when I watched it a couple weeks ago. It was mainly something that I had on TV while I played a video game, while I played Fortnite, and, that doesn't really count. But to go back to the point, I saw Die Hard for the first time, and wow. I've talked in the past about how I don't like to be part of a zeitgeist, because usually, like, the public at large will overhype something to the point where when I finally get around to it, it doesn't hit as hard for me, because my expectations are kind of through the roof, and very few things ever meet my expectations. Like, my expectations were through the roof for, say, the Indiana Jones trilogy. And when I finally sat down and I watched those Indiana Jones movies, it was like, this sensation washed over me that was like, those were good movies, but also, was that it? Was that all? Those movies did not necessarily blow my mind. They were fine and they were good, and there was this sort of thing where, like, I kind of had to marinate in it a little bit. I kind of had to let it sink in, because after the first watching of Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and The Last Crusade, it was more in retrospective, kind of thinking about them and going like, yeah, those were actually pretty good movies. But at the time, right after the credits rolled, it was just this sort of like, it was like, oh, that didn't change my life. It was only just good enough. And watching Die Hard, that movie lived up to all expectations and then some. Like, if you want to talk about a movie that would be as close to what I would consider to be the perfect movie, it would probably be Die Hard. Die Hard is incredible. It is so tightly scripted. It is so, action-packed. It's funny. It's incredible. It is basically a perfect movie, one of the perfect movies. And I can't really think of any other movies off the top of my head that I would put in that category. Like, maybe like the first Back to the Future would be in that category. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what other movies I'd put into that category. There was a time after watching Die Hard where I was thinking about, quote unquote, the perfect movie. And I had like 3 or 4 examples in mind at the time that I would put, Die Hard in that category. And for the life of me, I can't remember what those other movies were right now. But Die Hard is an incredible movie. If you've never seen Die Hard, like I have never seen Die Hard, probably watch Die Hard. That's my advice to you. Again, being Christmas, I ended up watching The Christmas Chronicles 2, a Netflix original movie. I ended up watching Christmas Chronicles 1 last year, and it was a very cute movie. It was, Kurt Russell plays Santa Claus, and like the important thing about that first Christmas Chronicles movie is that it kind of like it showed a different side of Santa Claus, right? Instead of being, the typical like jolly old fat man kind of thing, Kurt Russell as Santa Claus was kind of like, he was this almost like crazy old recluse. Instead of being, this fat old like toy maker kind of character, he was very much like I don't know, like an old mechanic, like a car mechanic, right? I don't like maybe this is exclusive to me. I had like several uncles that were, car mechanics growing up. So, you kind of get this picture of them being kind of these rough-edged sort of like handyman kind of people. That kind of crack open a beer and kick back in front of the couch watching football, and they swear a lot, and they're surly, and all this other stuff. It's that kind of picture of a car mechanic, and that's kind of what Kurt Russell's Santa Claus was. He was this loner that lived up in the North Pole. He kept to himself. He didn't really know how to socialize very well. He seemed kind of introverted. He was very like resourceful in a way that was really fun. And that, like I said, that was just a really fun depiction of Santa Claus. This kind of surly car mechanic sort of guy. And Christmas Chronicles 2 shows a lot more of Santa Claus. Like, it's all about going to the North Pole and showing the workshop, and you get introduced to Mrs. Claus, which is played by Goldie Hawn, which is Kurt Russell's real life wife. And it's just a generic kids movie. Like that's the only way I can put it. There's an evil elf, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so mad at Santa Claus because reasons." I don't think they even necessarily say why this one elf doesn't like Santa Claus. I mean, there are reasons. There's a whole like dynamic about this elf being like Santa's favorite or something, and then Santa got busy, or something happened and the elf became swallowed by his own pride, and now he's evil. And it's just, I did fall asleep during that movie for probably like 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, because it is such a generic, boring kids movie. All of like everything that was interesting about the first movie, all of like the weird kind of almost edgy sense of humor from the first movie is just lost. It's just a generic Santa Claus movie. That's all it is. And, it's probably fine for that. It's fine for what it is. But after what that first movie was, I don't think it's particularly special. Started watching more of The Mandalorian again, and I thought I honestly got further into that show than I did. Checking the episodes I had seen, I only saw episodes 1 and 2. I could have sworn I probably saw at least up to episode 4, but apparently not. Now I have seen up to episode 4, and it was the sort of thing where, like, the first 2 episodes were okay. It kind of established who the Mandalorian was. It established his quest to go get Baby Yoda. It was very much like table setting, and that was fine. It wasn't terrible. It was just merely okay. Once you hit that 3rd episode, though, that's where it feels like the show really kind of solidifies itself. That's where it says, okay, here is exactly who the Mandalorian is. Here's exactly what this world is. Here is exactly the plot that is going to carry us to the end of the series. And it's, it's kind of like that, oh, he's a rogue with a heart of gold sort of thing. I mean, there's very much shades of like Western stories in there, samurai stories, the wandering Ronin who kind of rolls into town. He has a larger quest that he's going through, but also he kind of, helps solve the problems of the town, but just kind of hung in the scaffolding of the Star Wars universe. And it's very notable for, it's not about Jedi, it's not about the Empire, it's not about the rebellion. They are mentioned here and there, and, there are stormtroopers in a few episodes. But it mainly just uses Star Wars as a science fiction jumping off point. It says, okay, well, here are Jawas, but they're not really the Jawas you remember from Star Wars A New Hope. Here are stormtroopers, but they're not really stormtroopers anymore. So, I'm excited to see the rest of season 1. I think there's probably 2 or 3 episodes left for me to see. Definitely interested in seeing where that goes. Definitely interested in seeing season 2. Part of the reason why I picked back up on The Mandalorian is because there's been a lot of buzz about season 2 and a lot of people that won't keep their mouth shut about certain spoilers in season 2. So, in a way, it's one of those things where it's like I'm almost glad certain things got spoiled for me in season 2 because they did end up being teasers that kind of brought me back into the fold a little bit and made me more interested in keeping watching The Mandalorian. Whereas, if I didn't know those things were in there, it really wouldn't serve as like this impetus to keep going or whatever, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, hearing those spoilers, seeing those spoilers even, one of the rare times where being spoiled on something like didn't actually make me that angry, It wasn't really this thing where it's like, oh, I can't believe the internet spoiled that big secret for me. It's just like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool that they actually managed to pull that off. I'm not going to say what the spoiler is. If you want to go seek out the Mandalorian spoilers, you are welcome to do so by yourself. You're not getting them from me. I also ended up watching Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which is a sequel to the 2014 American Godzilla movie. If I've ever talked about it here on this podcast before, I really don't like that 2014 Godzilla movie. It's very much, it like fetishizes not showing Godzilla. It's like a 2-hour movie where every time they show Godzilla start to do something cool, the camera cuts away before you get to see what it is. I think IMDb has a statistic on their trivia page where it says, it's this 2-hour movie that Godzilla himself is only in for like 7 total minutes. Or it's something like equally like super low. It's like 10 minutes, maybe 15 tops. And almost all of that time that Godzilla is in that movie is at the very, 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 very end. It's an hour and 10 minutes of not showing Godzilla and like being like very much, like I said, it fetishizes not showing Godzilla. It's very much, here's Godzilla, whoops, there he goes. And it's like just this 1-second glimpse and that's all you get to see. And it sucks for it. That is not true of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. This movie goes like in the first 30 seconds of the movie, they show you Godzilla and they hold the camera on him for a long time. There is a lot of Godzilla in this movie. There's a lot of other monsters in this movie. Another thing to know about me, about, how I feel about Godzilla as a franchise is that, growing up as a kid, like 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I loved the idea of Godzilla. It was the sort of thing where I told myself that I loved watching Godzilla movies, but I don't think that I actually did. I just liked the idea of a big fire-breathing dinosaur. And I had this fact confirmed to me because I have friends that are like real, actual, deep Godzilla fans. They deeply love those movies and that franchise. And at a certain point, like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, they did group streams for our friend group where they basically went through every single Godzilla movie worth watching, and we all watched it together in this chat room. And a lot of those movies, now that I watch them as an adult, I think they are tremendously boring. It's the sort of thing where I want to like Godzilla movies. I like the concept of Godzilla, the creature, but a lot of those movies are a little too silly for me. They're a little too talky for me, and they're just really boring and awkward. I don't take any pleasure in saying that. I'm not sitting here like, with a smug smile on my face, like saying like, oh, those Godzilla fans, those guys are losers. I want to be a Godzilla fan. And I feel like Godzilla, King of the Monsters is a movie made for people like me. It is like a highlight reel of everything cool about the Godzilla franchise, all packed into one movie. It's very much a movie made by Godzilla fans who know what's cool about Godzilla and know how to frame it in a way that makes it cool for people who are not necessarily like Godzilla super fans, I guess you'd say. Because it's important to note that, like, even though I've seen a lot of Godzilla movies, I don't necessarily remember a lot of Godzilla movies, but I know I've seen a lot of Godzilla movies. I can recognize important scenes in Godzilla movies. I like the whole weird flower thing in the Biolante movie, right? The trash monster. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name. It was just on TV like a month ago or 2 months ago. For some reason, all I can think of is Ghidorah, and that's the three-headed dragon who is also in Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I know important things. I know Mechagodzilla and how in some of the movies he's called Kiryu, which is the Japanese word for dragon. But it's important to note that for as much as I know about these Godzilla movies and don't like about these Godzilla movies, my mom hates Godzilla movies. When I was a kid and I had my Godzilla phase, she hated it. She thought, like, more than me thinking those movies were boring, she was telling me, the little kid who was watching those Godzilla movies and having a blast at the time, because I was 7 years old, and I was like, oh, look at that big dinosaur. He's breathing fire. Isn't that cool? She would just go on and on about how much she hated Godzilla movies because she thought they were, she refused to watch a lot of them. She'd only really let me watch them if she wasn't in the room at the time because she hated them. And she was the one who was actually telling me for almost a solid year now that I needed to watch Godzilla, King of the Monsters because she caught it on HBO one night and she fell in love with it. My mom is the kind of person who loves special effects. She loves big monsters. She loves CGI. She loves, creature effects. She loves, just special effects in general. She loves the way movies are filmed. That does not necessarily mean, that she likes dramas or whatever like that. Like I said, she likes special effects, like Independence Day. She likes Michael Bay movies. She likes Jurassic Park. She likes, like I said, special effects, CGI. Men in Black is another movie she loves. She loves Star Wars movies, I guess. I guess, I'm not actually sure. And she was telling me, all this time, watch King of the Monsters, watch King of the Monsters. It's one of her favorite movies. And as it turns out, it's a really excellent movie. It's not the smartest movie ever made. And, there are probably places where you could poke holes in the plot and, certain things get kind of glossed over a little bit. But it is big, dumb, loud fun. And the CGI looks really good, and the monsters punch each other really well, and there's lots of real great fights, and there's lots of real, exciting moments, and it's a heck of a movie. It is incredible. I've been telling friends for a while now, ever since we watched King of the Monsters together, that, there are two sides to a coin of what I would consider to be the perfect Godzilla movie. On one side of the coin is Shin Godzilla, the movie by Hideki Anno, the guy who directed Evangelion, right? He made a Godzilla movie for Japan, for Toho, that is very much it's very much like a horror movie. And the greatest horror of them all in that movie is the government, because it's all about trying to get the government to take Godzilla seriously, and they won't do it because they're the government and they don't want to spend money and they don't want to waste resources and manpower to fight a threat they aren't taking seriously. And the whole movie is about things getting worse and worse and worse, and the government not doing anything about it until it's too late. And it's a very slow burn movie. It's incredible. It's also very dark and very dire, right? And then on the other side of that coin is Godzilla King of the Monsters. Because it is just Godzilla as a big, loud, dumb, incredible action movie. There is story, there's plenty of story in the movie, but it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't shy away from showing Godzilla. It doesn't shy away from anything. It just, it is the Godzilla movie I wanted when I was 8 years old. It was the Godzilla movie I wanted in 2014 when I saw the original American Godzilla movie. It's the movie I wanted in 1998 when they did the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie. It is the Godzilla movie, period. Full stop, end of sentence. It is the Godzilla movie for America. And even like I was saying, it was very clearly made by people who knew about Godzilla, who respected Godzilla, who pepper in little pieces of the Japanese Godzilla lore, and they don't treat it as embarrassing. They don't shy away from it. They don't Hollywoodize it very much, at the very least. It is just very much, here is what we love about these Godzilla movies, even though a lot of them never came out in English, even though a lot of them aren't really known by most American moviegoers. Here is a highlight reel of everything that was ever cool about the Godzilla franchise. And that's what Godzilla King of the Monsters is. Absolutely incredible movie. Definitely highly recommended if you like big dumb action movies. That's probably it as far as movies and TV goes. We'll move on to video games now. I talked a little bit about Amid Evil. I talked a little bit about Theatrhythm. I've been playing those since the last podcast. You can listen to the previous segment where I talked about them in my 2020 wrap-up / Game of the Year segment. Also, what I received for Christmas was Dreams for the PS4. I even did a stream of Dreams, as it turned out. Oh, I called it the Dreams Theater stream. Probably could have called it Stream Theater. No, that wouldn't work. Anyway, that's a really interesting game. Dreams, I noticed this while I was streaming it, and I didn't comment on it at the time. It was mainly something that I noticed after the stream was over, as I was rewatching the stream archive, is that one thing that Dreams really makes me do as I'm playing it is kind of internalize and consider the work that goes into making a video game. Because there was one specific game during the stream, it was a 3D platformer called Good Job Human, or something. Oh boy, too much talking today. There was a game that I was playing on the stream called Good Job Human or Great Job Human or something like that. And during the stream, I actually say that, if this was a game that I was expected to pay for, if this was a product sold on store shelves and, this game was good enough that it could actually, I would consider buying it on a store shelf if it was sold on a store shelf. But I said, if this game was sold on a store shelf, I would have a way different opinion of it. But since it's here in Dreams, since it's for free, since I'm acutely aware of how difficult it is to make a game in Dreams, suddenly, the whole perspective of how I view this game changes. And suddenly I am acutely aware of just how difficult it is to make a video game. That's kind of a weird thing to say because, I make games. I am on some level a game developer. I know firsthand how hard it is to make a video game. But at the same time, there's a certain perspective where there's still a part of me that exists as this 14-year-old boy inside my brain that still thinks that video games are made with magic, that, video games just kind of materialize fully formed out of some kind of nebulous cloud of game development, that, it just, things aren't as hard as I think they are. And when it comes to Dreams, it's well, this has to be harder than it is to make a normal video game, but at the same time, Dreams seems powerful enough that it also seems like you could kind of make anything with Dreams, right? You could make an RPG, a platformer, a racing game. I've seen all of those things already within Dreams. But just the idea that, like, oh, this must be difficult kind of, like, reshapes the way that I think about how video games are made. Because it's probably hard to make games in Dreams, but it can't be that hard. And it's a very, like, weird, deep thing to think about. And, maybe I'm going over your head. Maybe I'm going over my own head. It's just a very weird thing and a very cool thing. It's real interesting to kind of, get your hands in there and dig in and see what's happening in Dreams, see what people are doing. I haven't made any games in Dreams yet, and that's partially because it really seems like there's a very, 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 very long tutorial just on using and learning all of the editor tools, right? It's the sort of thing where, after doing that stream, I thought, okay, I want to make like a favorites list. I want to put all of the games that I really, really like into a list somewhere so that other people can see them and can see, well, I recommend this game, I recommend that game, so on and so forth. And Dreams won't even let you make a favorites list until after a certain point in the tutorial. And like that certain point in the tutorial is buried deeply enough into the game that after doing like an hour's worth of tutorials, I still haven't reached the point where they'll let me make a favorites list of the games that I've played. So, that's one of those things where I want to make games in Dreams. I want to try making stuff in Dreams, but that's a very deep rabbit hole to stare down at the same time. Since I'm not really going to be doing much in the way of putting together videos or anything for the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 weeks, maybe I could start trying to power through more of that Dreams tutorial and, kind of see what happens. But yeah, wow. It's a really interesting thing, and every time I boot up Dreams, I am consistently impressed with what people have managed to pull off in that game. Like, it's the sort of thing where I don't even want to call Dreams a game, because it's not a game. It's a tool set, and it's a browser, and it's an archive, I started playing, like, Halloween stuff, belated Halloween content, and I was surprised, like, not only at the depth of the things people had created, but, like, how some of it was, like, genuinely, legitimately, like, creepy. Like, you think of Dreams and you think of all the things that you see on Twitter and on YouTube and things like that, where people, they make, like, memes and they make, like, really cute, simple things. They make, like, photorealistic recreations of food and things like that. It's all very, like, family-friendly content, or at least, like, content geared towards teenagers and children, maybe. But there are, like, games in Dreams with blood in them, with gore in them. Like I said, there are genuinely scary things in Dreams. And some of them even have, like, disclaimers on them where it will pop up and it will say, this might be too intense for children. Are you sure you want to look at it? And that's wild, right? I never really expected to see anything like that in Dreams ever. And it's there, and like some of it is even like listed within like the lists of featured content. Like it is stuff that the creators of Dreams, Media Molecule, have seen and kind of approve of even. That feels like an infinite well of weird, strange, interesting stuff that I will probably be playing for a very, 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 very long time. And maybe one day I'll make something in there, you know? I keep having these this is no pun intended, but I keep having these dreams of making things in dreams. Because, you know, it's not just for making games, it's also for making art, which means that, like, you know, if I wrap my head around its 3D tools, maybe I could make, like, you know, animated bumpers for my YouTube videos. Like, imagine a better late than never's imagine a better late than never, like, video intro that was made in dreams, rendered in dreams. You know, that's something that I could do, and it wouldn't even necessarily look like it was made in dreams. Like, you know, you can turn the watermark off. There's, you know, different sliders for different effects. You can turn off, like, the pencil shader look. There's all kinds of crazy, weird, wild stuff that you can do in dreams. And, like, you know, thinking about maybe one day wanting to experiment with making a 3D Sonic game. There's a lot of 3D Sonic games on Dreams, and some of them play pretty well, like, genuinely well. Not AAA professional Sega quality product, but well enough that you can have a lot of fun with things in Dreams. And it sends my mind kind of reeling, like, you know, what could I accomplish in this thing? How easy is it going to be to make these games and get, you know, just experiment and play around, just see what happens, you know? If these people could create a simple, like, 3D platformer with, like, physics-based controls and things like that, you know, how easy is that going to be for me to do? Because, you know, all these things are made on a controller. Nobody has, like, a mouse or a keyboard or anything like that. You know, at best, you get, like, rudimentary motion control using the PlayStation 6-axis, you know, whatever, the light bar on the PS4 controller. And it's pretty good motion control, to be, like, fair. You know, I don't want to belittle it or, you know, imply that it's crap or anything like that. Like, it's actually probably, like, one of the best, most responsive uses of motion control I've ever had in a video game. And it's in Dreams. And, you know, once again, I just bumped my microphone stand again. But it's really, really wild, really incredible. You know, I keep repeating that, and I know I'm going to sound like a broken record after a certain point, but just, man, what a fascinating thing. Lastly, at the end of all this, I played the brand new decompilations for Sonic CD and Sonic 1. If you didn't know, a certain person out there called, oh gosh, what was his name? It was like Rubber Duck or something. Basically went through and decompiled all the scripts and a lot of the source code for, you know, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, and Sonic CD. And, you know, these aren't just, like, source code decompilations. These are very specifically the Taxman and Stealth retro engine versions. So, you know, the versions with widescreen, with all the bonus features, things like that. You know, the versions people have been asking Sega to put on, you know, console and PC for years and years and years and years. And, you know, Sonic CD's already been on those for a while now, but I'm mainly talking about Sonic 1 and 2 here. And it's really interesting being able to play those versions of those games on the PC for the first time. I played through and almost finished Sonic 1, I believe. Oh wait, no, I didn't finish Sonic 1, that was right. I got up to Labyrinth Zone, and I got up to the Labyrinth Zone boss, which is usually, like, the hard stopping point whenever I play Sonic the Hedgehog 1, because that Labyrinth Zone boss is a pain in the butt. But, you know, it's interesting finally having those versions on the PC. I briefly considered doing, like, a definitive way to play video for those games, but there's, like, kind of a weird legal gray area problem with how you set these up. It requires that you own Sonic 1 and 2 on mobile first, because you have to, like, dive into the files and pull out, like, a specific archive that contains all of the game data. And with the way mobile phones are set up, with the way, you know, mobile storefronts are set up, you don't really get easy access to those raw files. So it's often easier to just pirate the games, where it's much easier to crack open the required archive files and get at the data required to import these into the unofficial PC version. And, that's doable, but as far as like content restrictions on my channel, whether or not I want to promote legal gray area stuff, it's something that I'm not entirely up on promoting. The creator of these decompilations has, links now where he explains how to get legal versions of all these data files. So I should probably look into that and see if it's possible to do a definitive way to play video. And then, as far as Sonic CD goes, I actually did start a script on the definitive way to play Sonic CD. But the thing is about this decompilation for Sonic CD is that it doesn't really change or improve that much. The PC version of Sonic CD that is on Steam right now is already more or less good. It's already basically what you want. The only thing, like the major benefit you get from the decompilation of Sonic CD is that you get easier mod support. And already there are mods for Sonic CD on the PC for this, this special decompiled version of Sonic CD where, you can add the drop dash, you can modify the time travel mechanics so they're not quite as annoying. And, that's not really grounds for me to do a definitive way to play Sonic CD video, because it was already, basically as playable as it's ever going to get. And, this doesn't really make it any more definitive than it already was. Most of the mods that I would recommend would just be kind of like, very opinionated sort of things, like, the time travel mod, right? The way time travel works in Sonic CD is that you pass a signpost marked either past or future, and you have to maintain a certain rate of speed so that you build up time travel energy and initiate time travel. Think of it in terms like Back to the Future, right? Where Marty McFly has to hit 88 miles per hour in the DeLorean time machine. In Sonic CD, it's basically the same idea, except that once you get up to like top speed, you have to hold your top speed for like 2 or 3 or 4 seconds before you'll be whisked off to whatever, past or future time zone that you chose to go to. With the way the mod works, all you have to do is pass a signpost at a certain rate of speed and you instantly time travel, which actually ends up making it really, 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 really easy to time travel, because all you have to do is find a sign that says past or future, and you run up to the sign and you stop in front of it, and then you charge like a spin dash, or Sonic CD has this move called the super peel out, where instead of holding down for the spin dash, you hold up on the D-pad for the super peel out. And you can just go, from a total standstill to a super peel out to maximum speed past this time travel panel and instantly time travel to whatever time zone you want to go to. There's no like maintaining a rate of speed, none of that really annoying stuff that got in the way of Sonic CD. You still have these big labyrinthine levels and everything like that, but at the very least, initiating time travel is a lot easier, it's a lot smoother, it's a lot quicker, but also that's just like, my opinion. Some people might not actually like, that time travel system. So again, it's not really me saying here is the definitive way to play Sonic CD. This is just more me saying, here are mods that I like for the PC version of Sonic CD. And, for a brief time, I was actually considering, I could just make a video on that, right? It's like, here are the mods that I like for Sonic CD. Here's a video about them. Here's why I like them. And then the whole thing where Screenwave sent me a termination notice that just kind of deflated all my plans there. But actually, like, that's the end of the podcast, really, is just me rambling about Sonic CD. It's like 4:30 in the morning here. If I'm starting to sound tired and rambly and weird, it's because it's it's my bedtime and I'm dying. So it took me 2 days to record this podcast, and I'm just tired. That's all there is to it. Good night, folks. I hope you had a nice podcast. It was a long podcast. Oh my gosh. It's a long podcast. I'll be back sometime, hopefully in March, maybe early April, with a whole new apartment, with a whole new mouth, with a whole new Let's Play of Max Payne 2, with a whole new bunch of everything. Like I said at the very start of this podcast, 2021 is proving to be a year of big changes. And I hope I'm ready for them. I hope you're ready for them. Because it really seems like they're coming whether we want them or not. Whew. That can be a spooky thought. People who know me personally know that I am a person who is very resistant to change. And these are strange times we're living in, folks. Stay safe out there and have a good one. I'll see you on the other side.
ほら見えるでしょ